Chapter 1677. In other words, he used his noble phantasm to destroy all the islands. It seems to be quite powerful. He seems to be a powerful hero spirit, but he's just an idiot who doesn't use his brain. This was the first time he had heard of such a willful heroic spirit. However, after thinking about it carefully, he understood. Heroic spirits like this were sometimes easier to deal with. An intelligent and powerful figure was the most difficult to deal with. It's good to be impulsive. Then, Toshiomi Inaka smiled in relief and said in a tone that suggested there was nothing to be afraid of, "There's no need to worry. There's no need to be afraid of such a powerful young heroic spirit. A poisonous snake that knows how to endure and hide in the dark is the most terrifying." Toshiomi smiled elegantly and poured himself a glass of red wine. He was glad that Dustless was an idiot who did not know when to stop. But Yen Fengili frowned slightly. Master hasn't had the time to watch the video. That guy's master seems to be Takamiya Cheshire's wife, Alice Phil. Hearing that, he spat out the red wine that he had just drunk. His good mood was gone. Toshiomi Enosaka's face was dark, and his hands were sweating. If that was the case, Alice Field would definitely do her best to assist Wei Gong Chizi in obtaining the Holy Grail. Even if Dustless was an idiot with low IQ, his destructive power was still extremely strong. No matter how bad a heroic spirit's combat power was, it was definitely stronger than a human's. When did they come to Dongmu City? Once they arrive, order your assassin to ambush them immediately. Also, send this video to the other masters through the secret channel. If everyone knows about it, we might work together to deal with them. The assassin that was killed by Dustless was just a clone of assassin. In the evening, Dustless, who was dragging 3 people, finally arrived at Dongmu City. As soon as they arrived at their destination, Takeo Joyu left impatiently. She might have gone to look for Takamiya Cheshire. Miss Takeo Joyu and Mr. Takamiya are really close. Dustless walked to Alice Phil and deliberately raised his voice to insinuate something. "You!" Saber reflexively kicked out, but Dustless dodged in time. However, Saber was Saber after all. She turned around and hugged Dustless tightly. Then, she dragged Dustless a short distance away. "Are you trying to sow discord between us? As far as heroic spirits are concerned, this is simply too despicable." Saber, who was holding onto Dustless tightly, scolded loudly. "Please don't do anything that will tarnish the reputation of the heroic spirits. Everyone will be humiliated if you do that." Cough, cough, cough. "Before we talk, can you please send me off first?" Dustless awkwardly glanced at Saber, who was hugging him tightly. He lowered his head and said helplessly, "Saber, with all due respect, you don't seem to understand the nature of the Holy Grail War." "Dustless, do you think I'm an ignorant little girl? How can I not understand this kind of thing?" Saber pouted and complained unhappily. She felt that her intelligence was being insulted by Dustless. The so-called Holy Grail War was actually 7 sorcerers and their heroic spirits fighting against each other. The end result was also quite simple. The winner was King. "No, you misunderstood me." Dustless shook his head when he heard that. His eyes shone brightly as he explained, "The reason why you joined the Holy Grail War this time should be because of the universal wishing machine, the Holy Grail, right? To be honest, I'm actually here for it as well. However, everyone seems to have gotten one thing wrong. Aren't all the Sarvant and Satyr doing this for the same purpose?" Saber nodded affirmatively. "No, everyone has made a mistake. The so-called Holy Grail can only fulfill one person's wish, and us candidates, including all the Masters and Sarvant, have a total of 14 people. No, after including myself and Alice Phil, the total number of candidates added up to 16. Dustless raised his voice and said meaningfully, "Even if you defeat everyone in the end, do you think Wei Gong Keisai will give the Holy Grail to you?" "This Keisai will probably give the Holy Grail to me." Saber lowered her head in uncertainty. Who knows what choice Wei Gong Keisai will make in the end? "Saber, I can tell you clearly. If you win and defeat all the Masters and Sarvant, then Wei Gong Keisai will probably use the command spell to make you commit suicide. This way, the Holy Grail will be his alone. That guy has an extremely naive dream. He wants to eliminate all evil in this world. This is simply a fool's dream. Such a thing is impossible. Where there are people, there will be conflict. This is fated. Unless that guy wipes out all of humanity, then there will only be justice left in this world. Dustless's tone was filled with a bewitching charm. Every word he said was like a gem to Saber. It was very convincing. After all, these were undeniable facts. In the original work, Inaka Toshimi had actually planned to do so. After the Hero King killed all the heroic spirits, Inaka Toshimi would use the command spell to order Gilgamesh to commit suicide. His method was very sinister. How would you know such a thing? Saber stared at Dustless with a face full of questions. About this, Dustless felt a headache coming on. He couldn't possibly say that he had transmigrated, right? He could only make up a reason to fool Saber. You immature fledglings do not understand the truth. I have participated in 3 Holy Grail wars. No. Including this Holy Grail war, I have participated in 4 Holy Grail wars. In the past, I had helped the masters defeat all their enemies. However, those 3 shameless masters used the command spell to order me to commit suicide. Chapter 1678. Saber was stunned when she heard that. She stared at Dustless and fixed her gaze on him. She could not move anymore. She did not expect Dustless to have such a torturous experience. I don't think Ji Shi is that kind of person. After hesitating for a while, Saber finally chose to believe Ji Shi. It's hard to know what's in a person's heart. Most of my previous masters were cunning and despicable anyway, Dustless said nonchalantly. He knew that his plan to trick Saber into betraying him had failed. If it was a Chunibu like Gilgamesh, he might have been able to trick her into betraying Toshimi Nagasaka. No. In the original work, Gilgamesh betrayed Toshimi Nagasaka and joined Yen Feng Chili. However, Saber was different. It was impossible for her to be as unprincipled as Gilgamesh. She deeply believed in the spirit of chivalry and viewed traitors as disgraceful scum. It was unrealistic to think that he would betray Wei Gong Kisi with just a few words. Moreover, even if Saber betrayed Ji Shi, she did not seem to have a suitable master. At that moment, Dustless suddenly raised his eyebrows. The boredom on his face disappeared and was replaced by excitement. Is there something wrong? Saber asked with a frown. She subconsciously looked at Alice Phil. She and Dustless were both powerful heroic spirits. Naturally, they would not be afraid of other heroic spirits. The only weak one was Alice Phil, who was her master. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. He looked at Alice Phil. As expected, a black shadow was rushing toward them. How despicable! Saber snorted angrily. She quickly swooped down with her sword. His aura is hidden very well. It's almost impossible to catch him. Moreover, this Sarvangt is a new face. Could he be assassin who specializes in assassination? He has a lot of doppelgangers. His methods are despicable, but he's smart. He knows that it's not me and Saber, so he's actively looking for weaker prey to attack. Dustless touched his chin. He suddenly thought of a black-bellied priest. Yen Feng Chili. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, a few sharp sounds came from behind him. Dustless subconsciously turned his head, and a cold dagger was mercilessly stabbing towards his heart. Shinra Tensei. A powerful repulsive force erupted, and the black shadow that had launched a sneak attack was immediately sent flying. Boom boom boom. The black shadow that was sent flying smashed into the surrounding streets, leaving a long mark on the ground. It seemed to have suffered quite a bit of damage, and there were obvious dents on its body. Is it really assassin? Dustless raised his eyebrows and subconsciously glanced at Saber's opponent, who was also assassin. There seemed to be quite a number of such doppelgangers. Yen Feng Chili. Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly, and a fierce look flashed across his face. Aiming at the wailing black shadow, a cold light flashed from his fingertip and mercilessly shot over. Void Flash. The colorful energy ball charged up for a moment before it locked onto Assassin and blasted toward her. Boom boom boom. The powerful flash swept her away, and the streets on both sides were instantly turned into nothingness by the energy released by Void Flash. At the same time, Saber's battle also came to an end. The result was without a doubt. Saber had completely defeated her opponent. This combination is very troublesome, Master. In a secret room somewhere, Yen Feng, Chili, and Toshiomi Inaka sat together. The battle screen in front of them was the scene of Dustless and Saber's battle. Yeah, both of them are pretty strong. That saber is the strongest job class, and this strange END is also a pretty strong heroic spirit. Toshiomi Inaka nodded solemnly, and couldn't help but feel annoyed. Originally, he and Yen Feng, Qili, and a strong heroic spirit like Gilgamesh had given them the confidence to win this Holy Grail war. Who would have thought that the 8th heroic spirit would suddenly jump out? END dustless. He had ruined a great victory. Just thinking about it made Toshiomi Inaka feel constipated. Moreover, END dustless and Saber were bound to be an iron alliance. It couldn't be broken up so easily. After all, their masters were husband and wife. We can also join forces with the other masters. An idea flashed through Yen Feng's mind. He leaned close to Toshiomi Inaka's ear and whispered, "Master, we can totally do that. For example, we can join forces with that guy." "Humph. Despicable and vile people. Leave that kind of bastard to me alone." At that moment, an extremely arrogant and disdainful voice sounded. A golden flash entered Yen Feng, Qili, and Toshiomi Inaka's eyes. Looking at it carefully, this person was completely golden. He wore golden armor and had short golden hair. His expression was unruly, as arrogant as a god looking down on ants. "Where are those two bastards? Tell me, and I'll personally eliminate these two eyesores," Gilgamesh said arrogantly. Joining forces with the other heroic spirits is an insult to this king. But let's see the situation first. Toshiomi Inaka was secretly angry, but facing Gilgamesh, he really couldn't bring out any confidence. He could only nod and agree. In fact, he really wanted to say to Gilgamesh, "You are a super big idiot who doesn't care about anyone else." In fact, at this moment, not only Toshiomi Inaka and Yen Feng, but the other masters and servants were also frowning. In the previous Holy Grail War, such a thing had never happened. Two heroic spirits stood on the same side, while the other heroic spirits were all alone. In comparison, they were at a great disadvantage. Chapter 1679. My king. Why don't we observe for a while? Find out how Saber and the male heroic spirit's noble phantasm are moving. Toshiomi Enosaka's expression was respectful as he lowered his head. He was more respectful than seeing his own father. "What you say makes sense, you bastard. This one will listen to your arrangements. I hope this gathering won't make this one feel bored and depressed." Gilgamesh's body lost its texture and turned into a golden light that dissipated. The Hero King's ability to put on airs is better than fighting. Yen Feng Qili saw the miserable Toshiomi Enosaka and couldn't help but shake his head. Sometimes, it's not necessarily a good thing for a heroic spirit to be too strong. Toshiomi Enosaka was called a bastard, and he couldn't refute it, but he had to be respectful. You can imagine how depressed Toshiomi Enosaka was. At this time, in another direction, more and more assassin doppelgangers came to attack from all directions. It was obvious that they had been deliberately instructed to attack Alice Phil, who was weaker in terms of strength. 90 black coffin. The black light that was enough to cut a mountain flashed out of thin air and cut the assassins in front of them. Even so, there were still many splits. There are too many assassins. Saber's hair was slightly messy, and she was panting, looking tired. Their intention is very simple. They want to force us to use our noble phantasm. Dustless was familiar with Yen Feng Qili's intention. "I'm afraid that we have been targeted by many heroic spirits." Observation hockey spread out, and the scene within a few hundred meters fell into Dustless's eyes. Oh! The final King Gilgamesh, the Conqueror King, and Lancer de Lamudo Odina are secretly watching the changes in the battle. Dustless's mouth curled into an imperceptible smile. In the original work, Lancer might have come out to cause trouble at this time. Now that Dustless and Saber were allies, this unexpected change might make him hesitate to attack the rat for fear of breaking the vases. For a moment, he hesitated whether to go to war with Dustless and Saber. Whoosh! Several sharp sounds came into his ears. Dustless looked up and saw more than a dozen noble phantasms pouring down. This dazzling light. Is it the king's treasure? Dustless's face showed a nostalgic look. The ability of Gate of Babylon was not limited to Gilgamesh. "But it's really a pity that your opponent is me," Dustless said softly as the spiritual pressure in his body surged. Binding Path's 81st step, air severing. In an instant, A transparent barrier appeared in front of Dustless. How dare you try to block this king's light with such a fragile object? You're overestimating yourself. The street lamp suddenly turned black as a stream of light materialized. Standing on it was none other than Hero King Gilgamesh. Bastards who are hiding in the surroundings, come out for this king! Gilgamesh's arrogant eyes swept across the surroundings. His voice was like thunder, spreading over a radius of several hundred meters. Who is this arrogant heroic spirit? Since you're so arrogant, do you dare to tell me your name? Lancer, who was holding 2 guns, had no choice but to walk out from the darkness. Who knows? I didn't expect that other than me, there would be someone else who dares to call himself a king. A rough and heroic voice came from the sky. A tall and strong man who was riding 2 mighty bulls also descended from the sky. However, among these 8 heroic spirits, one of them is about to die. How sad. Gilgamesh looked down at Dustless arrogantly. He turned a deaf ear to the barrier that was as thin as a cicada's wing. Bang! 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 The falling treasures all landed on the enchantment. Everyone thought that the enchantment would collapse on the spot, but who would have thought that it was unexpectedly sturdy, and nothing happened at all. On the contrary, Gilgamesh's attacks were all blocked. You're just a so-called king. You don't know your place. Dustless looked at Gilgamesh hopelessly. He couldn't help but find it funny. After all, he was just the king of a narrow land. What did he have to be so arrogant? You bastard! When Gilgamesh heard what was said, his face twisted. His scarlet eyes were filled with anger. Gilgamesh felt that he was being humiliated by Dustless's unscrupulous gaze. Whoosh! 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 Countless ripples appeared in the void behind him. Soon after, a large number of golden weapons appeared. Each of them was dazzling and sharp. They could all be called masterpieces. It was undeniable that Gilgamesh was only interested in the best items. He probably wouldn't even look at trash. This guy. The Conquest King had a serious expression. He looked at the large amount of light above Gilgamesh's head and couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression. At first glance, they were all relics. You can tell where this guy came from? Which era is he a hero from? Conquest King Iskandar asked the skinny young man beside him. Who knows? In short, this guy is very strong. The young man rolled his eyes and said, I asked you to watch the battle, but you insisted on coming out to cause trouble. You even said that you wanted to persuade the other heroic spirits to be your subordinates. Such actions are extremely foolish. The young man was called Weber Velvet, Conquest King Iskandar's master. Although I don't know which era Golden Twinkle came from, there might be a heroic spirit appearing now. Lancer looked at the gorgeous light with a serious expression. He didn't dare to be careless. At the same time, his gaze locked onto Dustless was filled with pity. Be careful, Dustless. Saber also noticed the abnormality here. She quickly rushed over to provide support, but she was forcefully stopped by Assassin. Both parties were once again engaged in a fierce battle. Seems like I have been underestimated. Dustless touched his nose in amusement. Without giving Gilgamesh a chance to attack, he turned into a flash and appeared behind him. The light was fleeting, and no one noticed it. They only saw Dustless suddenly vanishing. Speed is power. Have you ever been kicked at the speed of light? Hero King. Chapter 1680. With a speed of light reaching nearly 300,000 kilometers per second, even if a god came, wanting to see Dustless's trajectory clearly was no different from a dream, much less a mere heroic spirit. Who dares to sneak an attack on this king? Upon hearing this contemptuous voice, Hero King Gilgamesh immediately turned his head. However, what struck him in return was a destructive beam of light. It was so blinding that Gilgamesh's eyes were nearly blinded. He hurriedly closed his eyes. Light speed kick. Hero King Gilgamesh suddenly felt an excruciating pain in his face, as though his bones were about to break. He was instantly sent flying. This merciless kick had sent Gilgamesh vanishing without a trace. Bam! The land hundreds of meters away suddenly trembled. Only then did everyone see the miserable Gilgamesh lying on the ground half dead. He only had a weak aura left, but he was barely able to survive. He's so fast. I didn't even see how he appeared behind that golden shimmering body. Web Velvet looked as though he had seen a ghost. Idiot! Even I didn't see it, much less a dabbler like you. Conquest King Iskandar punched Web in the head in a bad mood. His expression was somewhat gloomy. Everyone believed that Dustless was about to be finished off, but who knew that this fellow's tiny universe would erupt, instantly crushing the golden shimmering body. Is that the power of a treasure artifact? Lancer was similarly dumbfounded. He suddenly felt thankful that his enemy was not Dustless, or his outcome would definitely be no different from Gilgamesh's. Furthermore, it wasn't only the Conquest King. In fact, even Lancer did not see how Dustless moved. Bastard, 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 bastard. Hero King Gilgamesh touched his cheek. In his rage, he hammered the ground angrily. His right hand was a bloody mess, but he did not feel any pain. Ka 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 ka. Hero King Gilgamesh's heart shattered into sand, forever unable to heal. As he touched his face, a gigantic footprint was imprinted on his face like a birthmark. This was all thanks to Dustless. Wow, you have become a lot more handsome. After carefully scrutinizing Hero King Gilgamesh, Dustless gave him a thumbs up and continued striking him. As expected of a king. That handsome face of yours is definitely unparalleled. Dustless's words attracted everyone's attention. Everyone looked at Hero King Gilgamesh's face in unison as they roared with laughter. Ha! What's up with that guy? There's actually a shoe print on his face. Coupled with his sullen expression, it's just too exciting. Iskandar the Conquest King laughed so hard that his eyes were watering and his stomach was hurting. It's indeed comical. Lancer wore an odd expression as he stared at the footprint on Hero King Gilgamesh's face. Ha ha, well done. It's best if this hateful Hero King is beaten up by others. Ha ha ha, Toshiomi and Osaka, who was in the same room as Yen Fongkiri, also saw this scene through a special screen. When he saw the clear shoe print on Hero King Gilgamesh's face, he felt abnormally refreshed. He even specially opened a bottle of champagne. Darn Hero King. It's good that he's taught a lesson like this. It saves him the trouble of putting on that disgusting face of his all day. This guy doesn't have any awareness of being a servant. It's as though I owe him everything. Toshiomi and Osaka took a sip of his red wine and smiled elegantly. There was nothing wrong with Gilgamesh suffering a setback. It allowed him to face the strength of other heroic spirits. It would save him the trouble of calling himself a bastard every time he opened his mouth. That heroic spirit sure is ridiculously strong. He was able to send Hero King Gilgamesh flying with a kick. He must have been an important figure when he was alive. That punk Kamiya Kaseki sure is lucky. It's fine if he has Saber helping him, but now, he has such a powerful heroic spirit. He's like a tiger that has grown wings. Yen Fongkiri looked nervous and was not as happy as Toshiomi and Osaka. In a short period of time, his assassin army was nearly wiped out. Let's join forces with the other masters. That way, our chances of victory will be greater. Toshiomi and Osaka was secretly delighted for a moment before regaining his composure. After all, Hero King Gilgamesh was his servant. It was fine to be happy for him, but he could not kick him while he was down. After all, they still had to work together to deal with the other masters. Is that all you've got? You can call yourself a king with such half-baked standards? I think I can become a god. Squinting his eyes, Dustless teased with a faint smile. Tisk! That face of yours is so domineering no matter how I look at it. Bastard, don't get carried away. Hero King Gilgamesh stared at Dustless with a ferocious expression. A beam of light that was hundreds of meters long appeared in the void. At least a few thousand treasures flew out from it. This punk will use parting sword EA, sooner or later after being provoked by me. Dustless stroked his chin. He was also the owner of the king's treasure, so he naturally understood Gilgamesh's ability. So. Cold beams shot over like torrential rain. Thousands of weapons launched their attacks at the same time. The scene was extremely spectacular. Conquest King Iskandar and Lancer quickly retreated, afraid of being caught in the crossfire. How can such attacks be effective against me? There's no need to even dodge, much less defend against them. Dustless shook his head and simply stood in place without moving. Pucci! 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 His body was constantly being shattered by the sword beams, but Dustless did not fall to the ground. He did not even bleed or suffer from the most basic injuries. This scene dealt a heavy blow to Hero King Gilgamesh. The enemy was right in front of you, but you did not have the ability to hurt him. Instead, you were being humiliated and ridiculed by your opponent. Was there anything more tragic than this in the world? Hero King Gilgamesh hated Dustless to the core. This rascal had looked down on him for no reason. Now, he had even used sorcery to ignore his attacks. He felt extremely aggrieved. Gilgamesh felt terrible and was about to explode. Chapter 1681. Gilgamesh's face was contorted. It was no wonder he was so furious. He had an extremely conceited temper to begin with. He could not tolerate sand in his eyes. For an ordinary person to look at him directly was the greatest insult to Gilgamesh. Now that Dustless had taught him a lesson, Gilgamesh could no longer tolerate it. Shoo! 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 No matter how he attacked, he was unable to harm Dustless. That calm face was silently mocking Gilgamesh's powerlessness and frailty. I'll stand here and let you hit me. The key is, can you hit me? You have completely infuriated me, bastard. Gilgamesh's face was even more contorted. His scarlet eyeballs protruded outwards as though they could fall out at any moment. He was really about to go berserk. I've never liked to cause trouble, but... Dustless's eyelids lifted slightly as he revealed a cold look. If you insist on courting death, if I don't teach you a lesson, I'll be looking down on you, the Hero King. With just you? This king shall tell you. Before Gilgamesh could finish his words, tragedy struck. Yomi no Miyazaka. Dustless's forehead revealed a scarlet Samsara Sharingan as he appeared behind Gilgamesh without any warning. He delivered another merciless kick. Light-speed kick. Boom! 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 Gilgamesh's body exploded with flames once again as he was engulfed by the flames. His beautiful golden armor was covered in dust as he was sent retreating by Dustless's kick. He was in a sorry state. Shoo! 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 At this moment, a sharp beam suddenly came from behind and was about to pierce through Dustless's head. Clang! 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 At the critical moment, a black figure blocked the sneak attack with a sword. Like a shield, she defended Dustless's back. The cold beam was also intercepted by Saber. You should thank me, Dustless. The person who came to his rescue was Dustless's ally, Saber. Thank you? Saber, do you think I'll be finished off by a scoundrel? Dustless turned his head slightly and glanced at the person who was fighting with Saber. It was Lancer. I don't think you're the kind of person who would ambush someone. Is this Master's command curse? Dustless lowered his head and fell silent as he stared at Lancer, who was drenched in cold sweat and had a pained expression. Then, I have no choice but to destroy you. Dustless, who had kicked Gilgamesh away, suddenly looked at Lancer's head. His eyes turned cold, and the tip of his thumb was already glowing with a destructive light. This guy is my opponent. Seeing that Dustless was about to intervene, Saber hurriedly shouted to stop him. She exerted force in her arms and instantly forced Lancer to retreat. Then, Saber chased after Lancer and launched a fierce attack. She looks like a woman on the outside, but she's a powerful lion on the inside. Lancer looked at Saber in shock. That powerful force had numbed his arm. You should be able to kill me quickly if you join forces with that guy. Why did you let go of such a good opportunity? Lancer expressed his confusion. He knew Dustless's strength. If he joined forces with Saber, it would only be a matter of time before they defeated him. But even if the two of you joined forces, I could still hold on for a while. Lancer added arrogantly. No, you misunderstood me. Saber shook her head and said softly, if Dustless and I joined forces, it would go against the spirit of the Night's Way. If the two of us really joined forces, you wouldn't be able to resist. That guy could even kill you alone. Don't you see? Dustless has been teasing that gold sparkle. Ah! Lancer fell silent and looked at the miserable Gilgamesh. This guy was simply the synonym of tragedy. After being beaten and humiliated by Dustless, he lost all his dignity as a heroic spirit. I'm going to kill you! Gilgamesh roared, and the void was filled with countless sword shadows again. The golden vortex kept flashing, and sharp swords shot out, all aimed at Dustless's head. It was enough to see the hatred this petty hero king had for Dustless. What a problematic child. Looking at Gilgamesh, whose face was filled with murderous intent, Dustless let out a long sigh. This guy's strength was second to none, but his tolerance was really unflattering. Then, I'll give you an eye for an eye. With a teasing look on his face, Dustless waved his hand, and the sky behind him also flashed with a large halo. The dazzling light made Gilgamesh's mind go into a trance. He carefully experienced the nature of the power. After a while, Gilgamesh opened his mouth wide. His exaggerated appearance was enough to fit an adult's fist. This kind of energy fluctuation is definitely not wrong. How does this bastard know my ability? Gilgamesh glared angrily, and his teeth were about to shatter. What's the situation with this Holy Grail war? Who is that guy? He even knows how to use the Hero King's ability? Then what use do I have for Gilgamesh? Damn it! Is the Holy Grail going to be given up to that punk, Takamiya Kisi? Not only was Gilgamesh, who was in the middle of a battle, so shocked that his jaw nearly dislocated, even his master, Enosaka Toshimi, was staring at Dustless in shock. Golden light dotted the top of his head, and countless divine weapons slowly poked their heads out. The range was even greater than Gilgamesh's. Imposter, you imposter! Gilgamesh had completely forgotten his appearance as a heroic spirit. He was like a shrew pointing at Dustless, who was using the gate of Babylon, and cursing. His eyes were about to crack, and he was about to suffer from internal injuries. Chapter 1682. The veins on Gilgamesh's forehead were bulging. He looked as ferocious as an evil spirit. He felt that his dignity and soul had been trampled on by the despicable guy in front of him. Shoot him through. Gilgamesh, who could not take it anymore, took the lead to attack. Divine weapons fell from the sky like a storm. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Dustless did not show any weakness. He immediately launched a deadly counterattack. The lights that decorated his head were also shot out mercilessly. Clang, 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 clang. Sparks flew everywhere. There were traces of broken steel everywhere. The divine weapons that were shot out by both parties were damaged. Boom, boom, boom. Thousands of relics were shot out consecutively, dazzling everyone. Even Saber and Lancer, as well as the conqueror King Iskandar, were dumbfounded as they watched the scene unfold. All of them were filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred. Why do these two perverts have so many relics? Is God blind? It's not fair. The hero spirits were cursing in their hearts. It was infuriating to compare oneself to others. Damn it! Compared to Dustless, Gilgamesh was so angry that he was about to jump up. As the ancient king, the hero king, he was an extremely conceited person. Now that he had been humiliated by Dustless, he was infuriated. Bastard, since you want to die so much, I'll fulfill your wish. The blood-red eyeball shot out a violent aura. A huge light appeared on Gilgamesh's right hand. A strange-looking sword vaguely appeared. Oh no, Gilgamesh is infuriated. In the sealed secret chamber, Yenfeng Kali and Toshiomi Inaka saw the scene and were shocked. The two of them only hoped that Gilgamesh could test Dustless's strength. It would be best if he could force him to use his relic. Who would have thought that Gilgamesh would be the first to lose his cool? As the master, Toshiomi Inaka was naturally unwilling to be the first to release his relic. This idiot Gilgamesh is infuriated. It's impossible to persuade him to come back. Toshiomi Inaka looked at the Crimson Command incantation in his hand and was frustrated. The only way was to activate the command spell to make Gilgamesh retreat. Otherwise, this idiot would definitely fight to the death with Dustless. Even if Gilgamesh took out his noble artifact, it might not be his doing. Staring at Dustless, Yenfeng Chili revealed a confused expression. He still hadn't figured out Dustless's background. What's the reason, Kiri? Toshiomi Enosaka asked calmly. This guy seems to have the same ability as Gilgamesh. If that's the case, the eighth hero spirit is too terrifying. Yenfengili said in a low voice. Are you saying? Toshiomi's expression changed. He understood what Yenfeng Chili was trying to say. He said uncertainly, that shouldn't be possible. Gilgamesh's EA shouldn't be able to use the eighth hero spirit. To be honest, I think there's a need to re-evaluate the eighth hero's strength. Yenfeng Chili glanced at Toshiomi Enosaka when he heard this. Then he stared at the surveillance screen and analyzed, The 8th hero spirit seems to be more familiar with using the king's treasure than Gilgamesh. It's really hard to guess who the imposter is, Master. Who knows, it might be Gilgamesh imitating someone else. In short, let's get the hero king to retreat. If this continues, I believe he will be defeated. Tashiomi and Osaka sighed in disappointment. He did not hesitate to activate the command spell to order Gilgamesh to retreat. Aya! Aya! Is the stray dog retreating? Dustless looked at Gilgamesh, who was suffused with a golden glow. He knew that Tashiomi and Osaka had ordered Golden Shimmer to retreat. If not, with the Hero King's personality, he would definitely fight to the death. Humph. Let's end it here. In the future, just you wait. I will definitely not let you off so easily. Gilgamesh warned fiercely. His flushed face finally recovered a little. On a closer look, Gilgamesh's body was black all over. His armor was covered in black smoke. The funniest thing was that Gilgamesh's hair had also disappeared. He had become a bona fide bald head, all thanks to Dustless. Darn Tashiomi and Osaka. You want to use a laughable title like Your Majesty to appease my anger? Do you think this king is a 3-year-old child? Hero King Gilgamesh was secretly enraged. He vented all his anger on Tashiomi and Osaka. He had appeared to establish his might, but who knew that he would become a stepping stone for Dustless to rise to fame? Then, what do you plan on doing? Conquest King. Gilgamesh fled in a sorry state, leaving behind Hero King Iskandar and his master, Wilbur Velvet. Seeing Dustless look at him, the punk's face was as white as a sheet of paper. Seriously, it looks like my plan of roping you in as my subordinates has failed. Conquest King Iskandar's coarse face revealed a look of regret. How could such an extraordinary expert lower his head to be his lackey? Farewell. By the way, I'm determined to obtain the Holy Grail. The Conquest King rode the divine might wheel and left. Dustless did not plan on pursuing him. This time, they were just getting to know each other. The next time they met, it would be a merciless fight to the death. After all, there was only one Holy Grail. He had to eliminate all them satyr and their heroic spirits. Why am I the only one left after all this fighting? Lancer, who was in an intense battle with Saber, cursed. He was certain that if Saber and Dustless joined forces, he would definitely be torn to pieces. Chapter 1683. Lancer wanted to cry but had no tears. In his heart, he cursed the hero King Gilgamesh and the conqueror King Iskandar who ran away. These two bastards were shameless. Seeing that the opponent was strong, they turned around and retreated. Was this what a hero would do? Especially to the hero King Gilgamesh who was beaten up like a dog. There's a flaw. Boom, boom, boom. Saber seemed to have noticed the ripples in Lancer's heart. She held the sword with both hands and increased her strength by several levels. She launched a fierce and powerful attack, suppressing Lancer and making it difficult for him to fight back. Damn it! Lancer, who was being beaten back, cursed. He did not expect Saber to have such a sharp eye. Even in such a short moment, she realized that his heart was in a mess. Clang, 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 clang. The loud roars continued, and the volcanoes created by the collision of the weapons kept flashing. Lancer was sweating profusely. A moment of mistake would cause him to be suppressed. Bang! The invisible sword coming at him was even more powerful. Saber became braver and braver as she fought. Her attack forced Lancer to retreat. His body even smashed into the wall, leaving a broken dent. Lancer's mouth was also bleeding. Saber, you're too despicable. Lancer, who was not convinced, showed an angry expression. He pointed at Dustless who was standing and shouted, "What's the point of fighting 2 against 1? 2 against 1? Dustless heard him and showed an amused expression. He despised him and said, "Is there something wrong with your eyes? When did I sneak attack you? And do you think you can survive 2 against 1? You!" Lancer opened his mouth wide and realized that he was speechless. It made sense. Dustless did not intervene in the battle from the beginning to the end. He only watched the battle as if nothing had happened and did not intervene. I'm not convinced. Lancer was too lazy to talk nonsense. It was good that Dustless did not intervene, but the psychological pressure he caused could not be ignored. When you were fighting with others, could you still concentrate with an enemy standing behind you? That's it for today. Your head will be taken by me in the future. Saber held the holy sword with both hands. Her gaze was like a torch that made people look at her differently. Ayo 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 ayo. At the same time, a raging roar suddenly came. The three of them were startled and rushed towards the source of the roar. Their gazes froze. Is this a berserker? Looking at the pitch-black monster, everyone frowned. That extremely oppressive aura was suffocating. Its aura was extremely evil, and it was as terrifying as a demonic hand that had walked out from hell. Saber, be careful. That guy is coming for you. Dustless stood in front of Saber and reminded her. Coming for me? Saber was stunned. She looked at Dustless suspiciously. There seemed to be no hatred between the heroic spirits. I can only see heroic spirits without hatred, but... Dustless's eyes glowed with wisdom. What if this guy is someone you once knew? Saber was confused by Berserker's words. She stared at the furious Berserker as if she was trying to find someone who matched him in her memory. Ayo 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 ayo. King Arthur. Berserker finally let out a series of angry roars. It was very hoarse. His entire body was covered in armor. That voice came from within the armor. No one would doubt that he was a demon disguised as a human. Ayo ayo ayo. There was another series of inhuman roars. Then, Berserker suddenly broke the street lamp and dived towards Dustless and Saber. To be more precise, it was Saber. As for Dustless, he was completely ignored by this guy. Bang bang bang. Berserker's strength was extremely terrifying. Every step he took left a dent in the ground. He rushed in a straight line, leaving a dent in the ground. You're just a vicious dog. You're too arrogant. The demonic voice rang in Berserker's ears. This voice sounded harmless, but it made everyone's hair stand on end. Even the two masters who were hiding in the dark, Kenneth Elmaroy and Jiantong Yeyen, felt a chill in their hearts. It was as if an invisible knife was placed on their necks. Woo woo. Even Berserker's body stopped. He hummed twice, as if he was telling Dustless not to meddle in other people's business. Immortal spell. However, his protest was completely ignored by Dustless. He only glanced at him coldly. The chakra in his body surged wildly, and a special red halo appeared between his eyebrows. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. At the same time, there was an extremely coordinated movement from the depths of the void. Immortal spell. Bright God Gate. Groups of black dots, like a natural disaster, filled everyone's eyes in an instant. This exaggerated formation made people involuntarily think of a natural disaster. What is this? A piece of wood. Lancer looked up at the sky. After seeing what was falling, he immediately took the initiative to distance himself, avoiding close contact with this thing. He had a feeling that a disaster was about to befall him. Damn it, Berserker, this bastard, actually didn't listen to my orders. Who told him to provoke that big shot? Jiantong Yeyen, who was hiding in the dark, cursed. He did not order Berserker to attack Saber and Dustless. Who knew that this guy would take the initiative to come out and cause trouble? Now, he had angered the 8th heroic spirit. Chapter 1684. Jiantong Yeyen regretted his decision. If he had known, he would not have brought Berserker, that idiot. It would have been fine if he had just pulled some aggro, but this time, he had pulled in 2 extremely powerful heroic spirits, Saber and Dustless. Jiantong Yeyen had been watching the battle. He had seen Dustless and Saber's performance. Without any exaggeration, they could be considered the strongest heroic spirit duo. When they were alone, their combat power was invincible. Now that they were in a powerful duo, their strength was on another level. This idiot really doesn't know anything. I wanted him to cause trouble for Toshimi Nagasaka, but this guy... Jiantong Yeyen wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Countless crows descended in his heart. He cursed Berserker's 18 generations of ancestors. This guy's ability to attract aggro was definitely top-notch. We have no chance of winning. Let's just retreat. Jiantong Yeyen glanced at the falling, bright God Gate. Jiantong Yeyen looked at it with lingering fear, and then he dragged his exhausted body and retreated. Jiantong Yeyen was not a scumbag. He was only able to become a master because of his father. Boom boom boom. The sky full of redwood fell. Berserker extended his speed to the limit, but the area covered by the bright god gate was too wide. There was no way to escape. He was instantly crushed. Boom 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 boom. Ka 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 ka. A sea of redwood fell on Berserker's body. His sturdy armor was all smashed, and his entire body was exposed to the air. This is a good chance. Saber's beautiful eyes flashed with passion. When she saw Berserker's armor crumble, she swung Excalibur in her hand. She was about to shatter the heavy armor on Berserker's face. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. However, good things did not last long. Just as the mask was about to shatter, Berserker's body suddenly turned into mist. He turned into a terrifying black shadow and slowly disappeared. Don't even think about escaping. Saber saw this and groaned. Just as she was about to chase, Dustless stopped her. It's useless, Saber. This guy's master ordered us to retreat. We can't catch him. Grabbing Saber's shoulder, Dustless smiled and said, and this guy's enemy isn't just us. The one who should be having a headache is Toshimi Inaka. You. Saber turned her head and looked straight into Dustless's eyes. Her beautiful face was filled with hesitation as she asked in confusion, sometimes, I wonder if you are really a heroic spirit. That's not important. In short, I'm a heroic spirit and your ally. Dustless scratched his head and answered nonchalantly. His actions and the knowledge he had accumulated far surpassed that of the so-called heroic spirits. Let's retreat, Alice. Phil is scared to death. Looking at the dazed Alice Phil not far away, Dustless slowly walked over. She was quite shocked by the bright god gate that filled the entire street. In terms of scale, it was simply too shocking. At this moment, in another direction. Such a large-scale attack, this should be his true treasured artifact. Toshimi Inaka and Yen Fong Kaylee were in a daze as they observed the red forest through a special camera. The boundless numbers made their hands cramp as they were unable to determine the exact number. In a flash, it was the next morning. Yesterday's battle had left a shadow in the hearts of many heroic spirits in Msader, especially Hero King Gilgamesh. He did not sleep the entire night as his mind was filled with Dustless's arrogant figure. There was nothing he could do about it. His domineering face had Dustless's footprints on it. It could only be said that it was an unlucky year. In the castle of the Einsbaron family in Dongmu City, Takemiya Kissy and Takeo Kuyu had also rushed back from the distant Pacific Ocean. The former's face was filled with fatigue and his eyes were empty. In the vast Pacific Ocean, Takemiya Kissy had been chased by groups of sharks for several hours. Not bad. Your performance was very good. In Takemiya Kissy's bedroom, after hearing about yesterday's battle, his listless and dispirited spirit was finally lifted. He revealed a rare smile, but it looked forced. It's just a pity that we didn't get rid of one of them. If Kissy was around, he would definitely be able to assassinate the enemy's master instead of flaunting his prowess and offending all the heroic spirits. Takeo Kuyu stared coldly at Dustless. She did not hide her dissatisfaction. This bastard had left her lover in the sea to be chased by sharks. Takemiya Kissy had been cheated badly. Msader, forgive me for speaking bluntly, but Dustless is not wrong. There is no need for us to assassinate the enemy in such a despicable manner. With Dustless's and my abilities, we can completely wipe out the enemy's servant. It did not matter if Dustless was silent, but Saber immediately stood up to argue. She believed in the spirit of chivalry and scoffed at Takemiya Kissy's despicable methods. She despised them and even looked down on them. Saber is quite righteous. He stared at the righteous Saber with interest. He did not expect her to defend him like this. As for Takeo Kuyu, Dustless glanced at her and laughed disdainfully in his heart. When I bring Alice and Phil to catch the adulterers, I hope you can still cooperate with each other like this. Boom boom boom. At the same time, a violent tremor resounded through the sky. A low and dirty sound suddenly resounded through the entire castle of the Einsbaron family. Chapter 1685. Jeanne d'Arc, my Jeanne d'Arc, come out and see me, I am Gilles Deleuze. After hundreds of years, we finally meet. A heart-wrenching voice resounded through the sky. Looking through the window, they saw a hideous, strangely dressed, devil-like figure appeared outside the castle of the Arensberg family. Is this guy Castor? Saber unexpectedly frowned. She didn't expect this guy to be so arrogant. He even dared to take the initiative to attack them. His behavior was not stupid but arrogant. After all, there were two heroes here, Dustless and Saber, but Castor was alone.
It seems that he is alone, and he can't wait to die?
Wei Gong Qixi looked contemplative, then his gray-brown eyes swept around. Staring at the large forest in front of him, he seemed to be looking for Castor's accomplice.
No, it's a miracle that this guy can come to us now. I thought he would come to us last night.
Dustless smiled meaningfully. Castor is a serious infatuated seed, his obsession with love is admirable, but this time, it's a pity that he is confessing his love to the wrong person. By the way, who is Jeanne d'Arc? We don't have such a person here. Wei Gong Qixi asked inexplicably. He instinctively smelled a conspiracy. Maybe someone else is framing us, trying to use us to fight Castor.
That's a reasonable analysis.
Wei Gong Qixi's lover Q Mamie nodded. The relationship between these two guys is too good. If I kill Wei Gong Qixi, I'm afraid Q Mamie will turn herself into a suicide bomber to kill me.
Dustless glanced at the two people who were intimate. He muttered to himself, turning a deaf ear to their conversation. What he did not know was that through the gap of the door, a bright gaze was quietly staring at Wei Gong Qixi. She observed this scene with mixed feelings and disappointment. Her beloved husband was whispering to another woman.
As his wife, how could Alice Phil be at ease? The Joan of Arc that guy was talking about. It's funny, but it's actually Saber. Dustless suddenly revealed an answer that made Wei Gong Qixi and Zhou Mami flabbergasted. Do you think we're idiots? Kuyu Mimi stared at Dustless indignantly. She felt that Dustless was just fooling them. It was ridiculous to say that he had mistaken her for someone else. If it wasn't Dustless talking nonsense, then it was Castor's brain twitching.
Joan of Arc, my Joan of Arc, you finally came out to see me.
However, the next sentence that Gilles de Rice said made Wei Gong Qixi and Kuyu Mimi furious.
Gilles de Rice looked at Saber, who suddenly appeared with an excited and surprised expression as he shouted loudly, Jeanne d'Arc, my Jeanne d'Arc.
Who would have thought that after so many years, we would have the opportunity to meet again, my Joan of Arc? Gilles de Les exclaimed excitedly. He almost stood up and began to dance.
His eyeballs bulged outward as if they might fall out at any moment.
That Castor is an idiot. Kuyu Mami stared at Gilles de Rice speechlessly. That guy was obviously out of his mind. Saber was King Arthur. She had nothing to do with Joan of Arc. The time difference between the two sides was thousands of years.
It's a miracle that he can suppress himself until now.
Dustless added again. However, this old guy's ability to rush to his death is really perfect. He knows that when the heroic spirits meet, it will be the end of life and death, but he still dares to take the initiative to come here. It's really hard to guess the thoughts of the infatuated man. Castor doesn't seem to be pretending. He seems to really think that Saber is Joan of Arc. Could it be that they look exactly the same? Wei Gong Qixi secretly guessed. He stared at Castor and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Suddenly, there was a flash of light in his mind.
He seemed to have thought of something, and he showed an excited expression.
This guy wouldn't want Saber to fool that super pervert who likes to kill people, right? Catching Wei Gong Qixi's strange expression, Dustless muttered with some uncertainty. With Wei Gong Qixi's character, he could really do such a crazy thing. In order to get the Holy Grail, sacrificing a heroic spirit, Wei Gong Qixi didn't think that it was not worthwhile. The so-called heroic spirit was actually like a chess piece. Mommy, come with me to see it. Wei Gong Qixi pulled Kuyu Mami and couldn't wait to rush to the scene.
Seeing the brilliance in his eyes, Dustless guessed that this kid had thought of a sinister idea.
Alice Phil, don't you want to see it? In the quiet corridor, Dustless stopped in front of the door of Alice Phil's bedroom.
He leaned against the wall and sighed. This is inevitable.
With your identity, you are destined to not live with Wei Gong Qixi forever. It's normal to have an affair. Even one day, Wei Gong Qixi will kill you personally to fulfill his wish. However, you are my master. I naturally won't let you get hurt. You can rest assured. This is my fate. From the moment I was born, it was destined. Looking at the beautiful scenery outside the window, Alice Phil's face showed a sad smile. As the vessel of the Holy Grail, her final fate was actually destined early on. No matter who the Holy Grail fell on, Alice Phil would inevitably die. Even if Wei Gong Kisi was the final winner, he would not let Alice Phil go. Don't be so pessimistic. There is a phrase called, "Man can conquer nature." If you want, I can help you change your cruel fate and get rid of the shackles of the Ahrensberg family. Dustless yawned tiredly. He looked lazy, but his tone was firm. Chapter 1686. Castor, please don't confuse people here. I am not the Joan of Arc you are talking about. Saber looked at Castor's crazy eyes. Her nose wrinkled. She was disgusted.
No, you are Joan of Arc. Castor shook his head stubbornly and said, Joan of Arc, have you forgotten me?
I am Gillis Lei Su. Have you forgotten me? Sorry, I don't know you.
After searching her memory again, Saber was sure that she didn't know the inexplicable pervert in front of her.
Damn it, damn it, damn it. My Joan of Arc doesn't recognize me.
Hearing that, Castor was furious. He picked up the child he had caught before and crushed his head to vent his anger.
Damn you, God. Is this all you're doing?
Castor was furious. His face was extremely distorted. He threw the child's body on the ground and smashed it into a bloody foam to vent his anger, and he kept cursing the god with vicious words.
You're such a crazy guy. Saber was stunned. She didn't expect that Castor would be so cruel. His actions could be described as the actions of a beast. Any normal hero wouldn't do such a thing to a child. Everyone had dignity and bottom line. Castor's cruel means were so vicious and vicious. If you continue to participate in the Holy Grail War, all the heroes will be insulted by you, so please disappear, Castor. Saber's face turned cold as she rushed toward Castor with Excalibur in her hand, and the sword swept toward Castor's cheek. It's not that easy to kill me. When Castor saw that, he suddenly jumped back a few meters away. His crazy face showed a nostalgic smile, but it still looked so gloomy and terrible, even more frightening than his twisted face just now. If a demon who killed people like Scything Flax smiled at you like the sun, wouldn't you feel disgusted? Even Saber couldn't help but have goosebumps. Evil and crooked path, go. Stop, Saber. At this moment, a stern voice stopped Saber's actions. Turning around, it was Wei Gong Kisi and Joyu Wumi who had rushed over, covered in dust. Master, do you have any questions? Saber looked at the smiling Takashi. She suddenly had a bad premonition. She had to remind him. Master, this guy is an evil demon. Even children are not spared. We must get rid of him. After that, Saber stared at Castor again. Looking at his excited face, she knew that he was not a good person. Especially the way he stared at her. It made Saber even more disgusted. Saber, let me deal with this matter. However, Wei Gong Keisai didn't care about Saber's opinion. After all, she was just a heroic spirit. As for the child's corpse on the ground, although Wei Gong Keisai was sad, it was only for a short moment. Sacrifices were being made every day in this world. Only by obtaining the Holy Grail, the universal wishing machine, would all the disasters disappear. Castor, to be honest, this girl is your Joan of Arc. Pointing at Saber, Wei Gong Kisi's words made Castor happy, but Saber stared blankly at Wei Gong Kisi. She suddenly understood Wei Gong Kisi's plan. Master, please stop before you go too far. I can understand your eagerness to get the Holy Grail, but I can't accept such a despicable method. Saber was full of anger and said seriously, I am not Joan of Arc. My real name is Artoria Pendragon, King Arthur of ancient Britain. It doesn't matter, Saber. Takeo came to Saber's side and whispered, Saber, this is all for the Holy Grail. You also want to get it to fulfill your wish, right? So the necessary allies are indispensable. But if I cooperate with Dustless, we can defeat the other servant. Saber argued. She despised Takashi's despicable method. Not to mention pretending to be Joan of Arc, Saber couldn't help but vomit when she thought of Castor's disgusting face. We have two heroes on our side, but we have an absolute advantage. But you seem to have forgotten one thing. What if the other heroes also learn from us and form an alliance? And we just got the information that Toshiomi and Osaka and Iskandar the Conqueror have come together. The same is true for several other heroes. Most of them have signs of forming an alliance with each other. In order to win the final victory, it's okay to use a despicable method, but... A voice full of disdain fell into Takeo and Saber's ears. Dustless was extremely annoyed. Using your wife as a bait to attract the enemy, this method is disgusting. This is all for justice. Takeo loudly refuted. Bullshit justice. Pursing his lips, Wu Chen ridiculed even more. His words made Joyu Wumi's face turn red. If it weren't for the difference in strength, she would have beaten Wu Chen up to vent her anger. Using Alice Phil as a bait? Saber looked at him blankly. She didn't know what Dustless was talking about. So you still don't know? Glancing at Saber, who didn't know anything, Dustless decisively revealed Takashi's background and said, "The reason why Takashi let the three of us act alone is actually to attract the other masters to assassinate us. He and Takeo hid in the dark to snipe the other masters, but this guy's plan was destroyed by me. I threw him into the Pacific Ocean to compete with sharks in swimming." Chapter 1687. How could he be so despicable? Saber was furious. It was fine if he was despicable to the enemy, but he was so shameless to his own people. Saber couldn't stand it anymore, especially when he intended to use his wife as bait. How could there be such a despicable person in this world? Master, I will never acknowledge your twisted justice. Saber stared at Wei Gongqi's back. This guy was simply shameless. You bastard, are you trying to drive a wedge between us? Joyu Wumi grabbed Wu Chen's collar. When she was about to scold him, she suddenly felt that she was being stared at by a powerful creature. She felt a chill down her spine. It seemed that she might die in the next second. Her whole body was cold. She looked up and saw Dustless with a cold expression. His eyes were as deep as the abyss, making Joyu Mamie's soul tremble. This guy's eyes are so scary. Fear flashed through her eyes. Joyu Mamie quickly let go of Dustless's collar and took the initiative to put some distance between them. No matter what, Dustless was a heroic spirit, and she was just a mortal. The difference between them was countless dimensions. Saber, don't listen to Dustless's nonsense. This is all a rumor he made up. Joyu Mamie glared at Dustless fiercely. Anyone could see that this guy was trying to drive a wedge between Saber and Wei Gongqi. No, what he said is the truth. At this moment, Wei Gongqi frankly admitted, just like what Dustless said, I plan to use Dustless, Saber, and Alice Phil to attract the attention of Master and Servant. This guy has guts. Dustless touched his chin and couldn't help but look at Wei Gongqi in a new light. But, immediately after, Wei Gongqi lowered his voice and shouted, I want to be a partner of justice. Some sacrifices are inevitable. Even if I kill Alice Phil with my own hands one day, I can't do anything about it. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As soon as Wei Gongqi finished speaking, a black shadow approached him at the speed of sound. Damn scum! How dare you use my Joan of Arc to attract other people's firepower? Go to hell and repent. Bang! Wei Gongqi was sent flying with a single punch, and even a few of his teeth were knocked out. His face was slightly sunken in, and there was a clear red fist imprint on it. And the person who attacked Wei Gongqi was Castor. Well done. Dustless gave a thumbs up to Castor. It was the first time he thought that the homicidal maniac was so cute. Which side are you on, you bastard? Be clear about your position. Kuyumami's mouth twitched, and black lines appeared on her forehead. She loudly reprimanded Dustless. Remember that you are Alice Field's servant, and Alice Field is Wei Gongqi's wife. So what? That's their relationship. It has nothing to do with me. Although Saber and I are on the same side, it's hard to be loyal to such a master. It's fine if he plotted against others, but even Saber and I were plotted against by Wei Gongqi. Forgive me for being unable to accept this. Kuyumami almost vomited blood when she heard that. She pointed at Dustless while trembling. She didn't expect that there was someone in the world who could be shameless to this point. Wei Gongqi planned to do this, but before all of this could be implemented, Wei Gongqi was thrown into the sea by Dustless to play a swimming competition with the man-eating sharks in the Pacific Ocean. Bang bang bang! Wei Gongqi, who was caught by Castor, was beaten violently. The power of a hero spirit was incomparable. With just a few punches, Wei Gongqi's cheeks were badly mutilated. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At that moment, a ray of light rushed toward Castor's side, and a small foot covered with light hit Castor's ferocious face with full force. Light speed kick. Boom boom boom. That merciless kick sent Castor flying more than 10 meters away. He glanced at Wu Chen and Wei Gongqi fiercely, and then glanced at Saber reluctantly,
and then he ran away awkwardly. It's not that Dustless wanted to save Wei Gong Keisai, but after that guy died, Saber would inevitably disappear. This guy is very cruel. I'm afraid that the recent child serial murder case reported in the news was done by him. Wei Gong Keisai stood up with an ugly face. He originally wanted to pull Castor into his camp. If the three servants joined forces, the Holy Grail would be easy to get, but who would have thought that this guy was so unreasonable? He beat him up without saying a word. Not to mention his teeth, in the end, he didn't even get a strand of hair. The most unbearable thing for Wei Gong Keisai was that he was beaten black and blue by Castor. Soon, someone will clean up Castor. Dustless stared blankly at the disappearing Castor. He still remembered that in the original work, Eno Sakatoshimi joined forces with the church and other masters to suppress Castor, and the final reward was an extra command seal. But in fact, it was just a simple trap. Eno Sakatoshimi and the church secretly colluded with each other. The essential purpose was to let the other masters fight, and in the end, the Hero King would solve the problem. The command seal naturally belonged to Eno Sakatoshimi, but the Hero King disdained to deal with Castor, so Castor was killed by Saber. In the end, Eno Sakatoshimi didn't even get a strand of hair, but gradually drifted away from the Hero King.
Chapter 1688.
Forget it, don't worry about that guy, let's deal with the others first. Suddenly, Wei Gong Keisai took a puff of his cigarette and said in a deep voice, Kenneth Elmeroy. This guy is our first target, as for Castor, let someone else deal with him.
This guy. He actually wants to let Castor go? This time, it was Dustless's fault.
He still remembered that in the original work, the reward for killing Castor was a command seal. Such an advantage was enough to make all the mages crazy, and it was also a good opportunity to hunt other mages. But now, Wei Gong Keisai was relieved. Dustless naturally felt strange. Could it be? As if thinking of something, Dustless's eyes fell on Saber's hand. No wonder Wei Gong Keisai didn't care about the swan meat and went to deal with that stinky toad. It turned out to be the reason. Dustless glanced at Saber's left arm. Her wrist was wrapped in a white bandage. There were obvious bloodstains on the white bandage, which were very conspicuous. Lancer's noble phantasm, Yellow Rose, had a rather strange ability. It could cause irreversible damage. After being attacked by this spear, the upper limit of the HP would be reduced. Even if the user used healing magic or regeneration ability, they would only be able to recover to the injured state. The injured state would be maintained until the noble phantasm was destroyed or Lancer was eliminated. In other words, Saber's combat power was greatly reduced. Her ultimate skill, Excalibur, was also blocked by Lancer's noble phantasm. If she didn't kill Lancer, she wouldn't be able to use this ability anymore. But it's necessary to kill Lancer. I'm really sorry, Saber. Dustless walked to Saber and showed an apologetic look. Saber was stunned and asked, You didn't do anything wrong, why are you apologizing? Alice Phil is my martyr, and you hurt yourself to protect her, of course, it's my responsibility. Dustless scolded himself for being careless. Back then, all he cared about was stepping on Gilgamesh. As for Alice Field, he left her to Saber as if nothing had happened. On one hand, he had to fight a strong player like Lancer. On the other hand, he had to protect Alice Phil. There was even the extremely despicable assassin who was secretly shooting him. It was normal for Saber to be injured. Don't worry about it. We were allies at that time. On the contrary, you were the one who defeated that golden archer. I should feel proud. That guy made me feel a little threatened. Saber's face revealed a delicate and gentle smile, which warmed his heart. It's best if you can participate. Wei Gong Keisai finally heaved a sigh of relief after looking at Dustless with a gloomy expression. He originally counted on Saber and Takumi Joyu to deal with Lancer together. As for Dustless, Wei Gong Keisai did not expect him to participate. For some reason, Dustless hated and even viewed him as an enemy. Therefore, in Wei Gong Keisai's plan, there was no script for Dustless to appear. Now that he was willing to take the initiative to participate in this hunt, it was for the best. Damn it, Lancer. Why didn't you join forces with that golden archer and berserker to kill the 8th heroic spirit and those two guys, Saber? Bastard, who gave you the confidence to do that? In the luxurious apartment, Kenneth was angrily throwing a tantrum. The handsome man who was kneeling on one knee in front of him was his servant, Lancer. Facing the angry Kenneth Elmeroy, Lancer chose to remain silent. Lord, I will definitely defeat those two guys fair and square and help you obtain the Holy Grail. Please believe me. I swear in the name of Delumudo Odina. Lancer swore with a serious face. Unfortunately, his master Kenneth did not buy it. Let me make it clear. This is something that should be done. Do you still need to swear? Are you saying that if you don't swear, you won't help me obtain the Holy Grail? Watch your tone, Lancer. Kenneth snorted coldly. Judging from his tone, he was treating Lancer as a useless tool. Kenneth's eyes became colder and colder. If he could, he would immediately change to a heroic spirit with a more flexible mind. Lancer, this guy, was getting more and more unpleasant to the eye. He was extremely annoying. Moreover, his thoughts were too stubborn. It was fine as long as he could obtain the final victory. It did not matter even if he had to use despicable tricks. In Kenneth's eyes, the so-called chivalry spirit was just bullshit. You can talk about the chivalry spirit with others, but would others abide by this ridiculous rule with you? It was still a sneak attack. Ah, Lancer, I really pity you. Your master is very similar to that guy Wei Gong Qixi. He would do anything to achieve his goal. A frivolous voice suddenly sounded. Kenneth and Lancer were stunned at the same time. They looked towards the direction of the voice at the same time. Outside the window, there was actually a figure floating. It's you. That smiling face of Wu Chen's fell into the two people's eyes and was extremely asking for a beating. After that, Kenneth and Lancer both exclaimed. Among them, Kenneth's expression was the most interesting. He said furiously, "Impossible, I have set up a lot of." Stupid thing, do you think those tricks to trick children will work on heroic spirits? No wonder an idiot like you was killed by Wei Gong Qixi's plot. You're so stupid. Dustless sneered loudly. He snorted at the barrier that Kenneth had set up. Chapter 1689. Dustless was not looking down on Kenneth, but he was too naive. Although a magician was powerful, there was a huge difference between a human and a hero spirit. If the difference could be easily made up, why would a hero spirit be needed in a battle? Is this fella here to provoke me? Kenneth's eyeballs moved quickly as his face turned serious. Dustless was coming at them aggressively. It seemed like they had no other choice but to fight him. Your Majesty, let me have a fight to the death with this guy. Lancer stared at Wu Chen with burning eyes. His eyes were filled with a burning desire to fight. However, Kenneth, who was hesitant, ignored him. Idiot, don't you know there's a saying that there must be something wrong if something is out of the ordinary? Or are all hero spirits so stupid? There must be a trap for him to come to us. Kenneth stared at Lancer angrily and cursed him for being stupid. No, we can't fight him. We must drag it out. This fella must have set a trap for us since he came to us. Wouldn't we be idiots if we step on the landmine without hesitation? Kenneth shook his head decisively after pondering for more than 10 seconds. He smiled proudly as he stared at Dustless. I know what you're planning to do. Saber was stabbed by Lancer and she can't use her arm anymore. Her combat power will be greatly reduced. You came to us in such a hurry because you want to break the curse on Lancer's relic, right? Yo, it's a miracle. You idiot, you're smart. Dustless was actually mocking Kenneth. But you're such a despicable person. Will it work if you reject me? You're so naive that I'll think that you're a kid. You want to force me to fight? Don't even think about it. Kenneth rejected him decisively, ignoring Lancer's burning desire to fight. He was sure that Dustless came to him and there must be a trap for him. He would fall into the trap if he challenged him. Hehe. It's good that we don't fight. Actually, compared to violent fights, I prefer things that men like to do. Dustless suddenly laughed sinisterly and teased. Oh right, I forgot to tell you just now. Your fiancée, Soren Azirii Sophia, is crying and begging you to marry her. Kaseth, if you refuse, then such a beautiful woman will be mine. You took Solo away? Bastard. Just when did the heroic spirit summoned by the Holy Grail War become so shameless and perverted? Damned bastard. Kenneth trembled as he pointed at Dustless. His vision turned black, and he almost passed out from anger. He stared straight at Dustless. The impact of these words was no less than being struck by lightning. As a heroic spirit, you are an out-and-out hero. You even use such a despicable and ugly method. Kenneth, who had regained his senses, was furious. He cursed Dustless in his heart for being so shameless. This bastard kept saying that he and Wei Gong Kisi were despicable, but they even kidnapped a hostage. Who could be more despicable than Dustless? Teskeske, this really has nothing to do with me. It was Wei Gong Kisi who did it. Dustless continued to laugh sinisterly and exerted pressure. He even showed an expression that said, "Don't blame me." He also pushed all the responsibility to Wei Gong Kisi. The so-called protagonist was actually used as a scapegoat. Master of Lancer, since you're not going to fight, then I'll retreat. She's called Sola, right? That beautiful woman is still waiting for me to spend the night with her. She's crazy about such a handsome heroic spirit like me. Dustless showed a strange and wretched expression that all men understood. Then, he disappeared from Kenneth's sight. Plop! Kenneth, who couldn't take the blow, fainted. The moment he closed his eyes, Sola Nazili Sophia's sobbing face suddenly appeared in his mind, as well as Dustless, who was unscrupulously abusing her. Kenneth immediately stood up and kicked Lancer in annoyance. He roared furiously, "Damn it, why are you still standing here, you idiot? Hurry up and chase after her. Do you want to see another green hat on my head?" Kenneth roared in a deranged manner. He even cursed. Lancer's reaction to battle could be said to be perfect, but when it came to this kind of matter that concerned a man's dignity, he became nervous. Green hat. Lancer was stunned for a moment. Then, he came to a realization after thinking about it carefully. He promised solemnly, "My lord, don't worry. Leave Madam's safety to me. Also, you don't have to worry. Madam will definitely not be charmed by that guy. Although he's more handsome than you, I believe that with your charisma, you'll definitely capture Madam's heart." Before leaving, Lancer suddenly advised Kenneth out of kindness. However, the latter only stared at Lancer blankly. That absent-minded gaze was obviously questioning. "You and Dustless are purposely attacking me, right?" "Ka ka ka." Lancer stabbed the transparent tempered glass with his spear, and looked at Dustless's disappearing figure from afar. He decisively gave chase at full speed. "You're quite fast. You've caught up in such a short time?" Dustless turned his head and stared at the black figure that was gradually closing in on him. His cheeks no longer had the frivolous look from before. Instead, it was replaced by endless coldness. "Damn that guy! Wei Gong Keisai doesn't deserve to be a magician. He even used such disgusting methods. I must personally chop him into 8 pieces to vent my anger." Kenneth clenched his fists tightly and gritted his teeth as he growled. He was really disgusted by Dustless. He pushed all the blame onto Wei Gong Keisai. Chapter 1690. Kenneth walked out of the apartment in a huff. He couldn't control the flames in his heart as he stood in the hallway. His spittle flew everywhere as he cursed Wei Gong Kisi for being despicable and shameless. He even cursed his 18 generations of ancestors. As a magician, he actually kidnapped someone else's fiancée to blackmail them. He was too shameless. What nonsense is this guy spouting? Kidnap his fiancée? Kisi, have you done such a thing before? Why didn't I know about it? In the underground parking lot, Wei Gong Kisi and Takeo Joyu were speechless as they were setting up the bombs. They had installed invisible listening devices in the entire apartment. Kenneth's cursing and scolding all fell into the ears of Wei Gong Kisi and Takeo Joyu. God knows what he's talking about. Especially Wei Gong Kisi. His face was almost the color of a pig's liver. He really wanted to grab Kenneth and beat him up, then ask him when he kidnapped his fiancée. This was completely unreasonable. Don't worry about such trivial matters. Our plan seems to have been superfluous. Dustless has already forced Kenneth out. He has set up all kinds of barriers and traps in this building. We will be at a disadvantage if we fight here. Let's go to Dustless' place and work together with him to get rid of Kenneth and Lancer. Wei Gong Kisi lit a cigarette and took a leisurely puff before saying, "Let's go to Dustless' place. Kenneth is probably rushing there as well." Under the black night sky, in an abandoned warehouse, it was as terrifying as hell.
Sharp screams could be heard from time to time, and blurry ghostly shadows were reflected on the walls. Even breathing was several times more difficult than usual. "Don't kill me." Kenneth's fiancée, Sora, looked at the approaching figure in fear. Fear appeared on her delicate face.
"That will depend on how you please me." The tone of boredom spread throughout the deathly silent room. Dustless sat on the chair with a lazy expression and looked at Sora, who was hiding in the corner. He realized that Lancer would still need a while to rush over. He stared at Sora's scared face and couldn't help but tease her. 10,000 mammoth heavenly attraction. A strong gravitational force erupted from his palm, and Sola's body floated over uncontrollably. "It's a long night. Don't you think you need some entertainment to pass the time?" Dustless grabbed Sola's throat and asked evilly. "As long as you don't kill me, I'll agree to any of your conditions." Sola looked at Dustless with a begging expression. "Really? That's for the best." Dustless pointed to his left and right legs. He closed his eyes and said, "Massage my legs. If I'm satisfied, you can leave here safely." "I understand." Sora nodded obediently before kneeling on the ground and massaging Dustless's legs rhythmically with her soft hands. Bang bang bang. Poochie. 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 After a few loud gunshots, Sola stopped moving and fell to the ground. The smell of gunpowder still lingered in the air. Dustless opened his eyes and looked at Sola. Her body was covered in blood and flesh. Her abdomen was also badly mutilated, and the finger-sized wound was clearly visible. A heroic spirit really knows how to enjoy life. Two silhouettes walked out from the dark corner. Looking sideways, it was Wei Gong Kisi, who was wearing black clothes, and his assistant, Takeo Joyu. "She's a scourge." Wei Gong Kisi glanced at Sola, who was unwilling to die, and said expressionlessly, "If you want to resent someone, you can only resent yourself for being Kenneth's fiancé. Do you think you can fool me with that ridiculous trick of yours?" Wei Gong Kisi. Lifting his eyelids, Dustless stared at Wei Gong Kisi's cold face and sneered, "Even if she wasn't Kenneth's fiancé, you still wouldn't let her go." For a person who was distorted by the so-called righteous companions, he wouldn't care how many people were sacrificed in order to achieve his goal. Anyway, in Wei Gong Kisi's eyes, these were necessary sacrifices. "Sola." At the same time, a sorrowful cry sounded. Looking at the direction where the sound came from, it was Lancer and Kenneth. "Damned Wei Gong Kisi. Sola didn't participate in this war. Why did you do this to her?" Kenneth asked with red eyes, looking like a gambler who had lost everything. "Don't think that I don't know. Although you have signed a contract with Lancer, the magic that sustains Lackner is provided by this woman. She can only blame herself for this." Looking at Kenneth's eyes that were filled with hatred, Wei Gong Kisi answered frankly, "Lackner, I'll leave that heroic spirit to you. Get rid of these eyesores for me." Kenneth roared crazily. Dustless left Lackner to him and he pounced on Wei Gong Kisi. He couldn't wait to die together with him. "I will definitely complete your mission, Lord." Lancer also stared at Wu Chen in an unfriendly manner. A shocking viciousness occasionally flashed across his eyes. "Bring it on, Lancer. This is your last performance. Try your best to dance. Don't disappoint me." Dustless, who was sitting on the chair, smiled. He supported his chin with his right hand and looked at Lancer with an expectant expression. "As you wish." Lancer's gaze froze and he stared at Dustless for a while. Then, he turned into a straight black shadow and charged over. Meanwhile, Wei Gong Kisi and Kenneth were entangled in a fight. Chapter 1691. The dense cold light was coming at him at an extremely fast speed. Within a few seconds, Lancer, who was wielding his relic, had stabbed hundreds of times. Unfortunately, Dustless seemed to be omniscient as he was able to avoid the fatal attacks every time. God is really ruthless. Dustless took the initiative to communicate with Lancer as his body floated backward. "Don't talk nonsense. Just bring it on." Lancer's eyes were as deep as the abyss as he held the crimson spear in his hand. "Nonsense? Don't you think fate is cruel? God is really cruel and heartless to let the perfect me meet you who is full of flaws." Dustless sighed with extreme narcissism and looked at Lancer with eyes full of pity. "You're too much." Hearing this, Lancer waved the spear in his hand again. The sharp tip of the spear pounced toward Dustless's head. Elemental transformation. Dustless's body was covered in a bright golden light as he did not hesitate to use his best skill. The spear fiercely pierced through Wu Chen's head, penetrating between his eyebrows. However, the strange thing was that there was no blood flowing out of the wound. Moreover, the feeling was extremely strange. It gave people the feeling that they had hit the air. What kind of hero spirit is this guy? Lancer quickly pulled out the relic that was pierced through Dustless's head. In an instant, the wound was healed at the speed of light. It seemed like nothing had happened at all. He stared at Dustless cautiously. His bottomless eyes were as terrifying as the abyss. Nature's attraction. He grabbed the air and a strong gravitational force exploded. An invisible force distorted the surrounding environment. Wherever the gravitational force reached, the laws of physics would lose their effect and everything would float. Lancer was the same. Get over here. With a loud shout, the chakra in Dustless's body increased the output by a few times. Lancer, who was initially struggling, suddenly lost control of his body. You're courting death. A ferocious look appeared on Lancer's face. He simply stopped resisting and used the inertia of gravity to lunge at Dustless. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Lancer waved his spear with all his might, and the cold light scattered. It looked like Dustless's head was going to be pierced into a beehive. Lancer's idea was extremely crafty. There was no way to escape. No matter which direction he dodged in, he would be torn apart by the cold light. Die! Lancer seemed to have seen through Dustless's miserable death and revealed a victorious smile. Bang bang bang! At the same time, a majestic repulsive force suddenly broke out of his body. Lancer, who was caught off guard, was also affected. His proud face instantly turned tragic. Shinra Tensei. Lancer's body was sent flying by the super-strong repulsive force. Ka ka ka. The hard wall was cracked by him, and there was even a dent in it. Lancer's mouth was stained with fresh blood. This guy can actually control gravity and repulsive force at the same time. Lancer wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His whole body was in severe pain, as if he was being pricked by needles. He had to gasp for breath just to move his body slightly. It was extremely strenuous. If an ordinary person was hit, they would have been turned into a bloody pulp. Keske, your body is very strong. His eyes moved around Lancer. The bones in this guy's body were faintly showing signs of falling apart. It could be said that it was a miracle that he could still stand up. Humph, you're still far from defeating me. After taking a breath of cold air, the pain in Lancer's body eased a little. He stared at Dustless with a burning gaze. There was no sign of discouragement on his handsome face. I really don't understand people like you. You know that the difference in strength is like heaven and earth, but you still refuse to give up in the end. A tenacious spirit like perseverance can't make up for the difference in strength. Dustless shook his head to express his confusion. At the same time, a blue light appeared on his fingertips. Void flash. Boom, boom, boom. The energy ball was flicked out by Dustless's finger and instantly annihilated Lancer. There was a violent explosion. Lancer did not even have the time to scream before he was eroded by the high-density energy ball. Plop! Lancer lay in the crater, his entire body charred beyond recognition. The high temperature from the void flash explosion had burned him to the point where he didn't even look like a human anymore. He was still panting, but his consciousness had already fainted. Let me give you the final blow. Looking at Lancer, who was howling in pain, a big shiny sword appeared in Dustless's hand. The light that was reflected was accompanied by a scorching attack. It could easily burn the skin of a human with just a touch. Damn trash, Lancer, this useless trash. It's fine if you can't help me at this time, but you actually want me to help you out. Useless trash. On the other side, Kenneth cursed fiercely. He did not expect Lancer to be so useless. After being beaten up by Dustless, he was coldly suppressed without even having the strength to retaliate. Get lost. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Kenneth suddenly got rid of Wei Gong Kisi and turned to Joyu Mami, who had the weakest strength. He quickly grabbed her and subdued her in a flash. That perverted heroic spirit, if you don't want this guy to die, quickly stay away from Lancer. Kenneth shouted at Dustless. He did not want to lose, nor did he want to withdraw from this Holy Grail war in advance. If Lancer died, it would mean that everything was over. Kenneth did not want to leave in grief.
Chapter 1692.
Staring at Dustless with a ferocious look, Kenneth glared back with a stern expression. However, Kenneth sadly discovered that although he was angry, the consequences weren't serious at all. Dustless stepped on Lancer's body and looked at him frivolously. "Miss Wumi, you should be very happy to die for justice, right?" Dustless stared at the pale-faced Juyu Wumi and sent Kenneth to hell with one sentence. Weigong Jishi's expression changed when he heard that. His eyes flickered, and no one knew what he was thinking. He remained silent. "Ha!" Kenneth was hit hard by Dustless's words and said angrily, "You bastard, this is your master's mistress. Can you bear the consequences of her death?"
"No, no."
Shaking his finger a few times, Dustless smiled indifferently and said, "I think Miss Wumi will be very willing to sacrifice herself." Juyu Wumi glared at Dustless and looked at him angrily. She stuttered for a moment and didn't know how to answer. If she could live, who would choose to die? Moreover, Juyu Wumi still hoped that after Alice Phil disappeared, she would become the official mistress and live the fairy tale life of her dreams.
"It seems like you don't want to."
Kenneth heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that.
Joy appeared on his face.
He was really afraid that Juyu Wumi would say something like, "I'm not afraid of death.
I must kill Lancer," or something like that.
Dustless, kill Lancer.
At this moment, Weigong Jishi ordered with a cold face. "Are you crazy? This guy is your secret lover. Are you going to ignore her life and death now?" Kenneth shouted in disbelief. He must have investigated Weigong Jishi's matter clearly. The secret relationship between Juyu Wumi and Weigong Jishi naturally couldn't escape Kenneth's eyes. "Jishi." Juyu Wumi lowered her head with a complicated expression. Her eyes were filled with crystal tears. Swish, swish, swish. Suddenly, an unexpected cold light attacked. Dustless was stunned. The moment he turned around, a cold light attacked his heart. Puchi! A blood-red hole appeared where Dustless's heart was. His whole body was pierced through by the cold light. If his heart was destroyed, even a heroic spirit would die. This sudden scene caused everyone to be stunned. They all stared at the figure behind Dustless in unison, and an unexpected figure appeared before their eyes. It was Lancer, who was severely exhausted. "Lancer actually sneak-attacked me. Your knighthood spirit should be very valuable. You shouldn't do such a despicable thing like sneak attack." Dustless stared blankly at Lancer, who had a painful expression.
"Ha ha ha ha." At this moment, an unusually proud laugh came from Kenneth's mouth.
He was beaming with joy. "You bunch of idiots." With Lancer's character, he definitely wouldn't do something like a sneak attack.
However, pointing at the command incantation on his arm, Kenneth laughed and said, "But if I were to use the Lancer to pretend to be dead and attack you, everything would be different."
"Master, are you that despicable?" Lancer's face was filled with pain.
Looking at Kenneth, who was laughing proudly, he did not hide the disgust deep in his eyes.
"Shut up, you idiot. You've ruined my reputation, and now you've caused Sola's death. Do you still dare to blame me, you useless piece of trash servant? Moreover, I let you kill this guy. You should thank me." Kenneth laughed crazily, completely ignoring the knighthood.
The masters of the Holy Grail War would not follow this idiotic and ridiculous fallacy.
Swish, swish, swish.
A straight ray of light cut through the dark and oppressive environment, turning into a sharp lightsaber and went straight for Koni's, who was gloating.
"Puchi!"
This ray of light instantly pierced through his abdomen, and a hole the size of a human head appeared. His disgusting laughter also disappeared in an instant.
Who did this?
Ignoring the piercing pain all over his body, Kenneth looked for the initiator of the sneak attack.
"Ah! The culprit is right in front of you. What are you looking at?" A lazy voice was heard.
Kenneth immediately followed the voice and skimmed over. To his astonishment, it was Dustless.
"You should be dead. Your wound has healed?" "Bullshit."
Kenneth looked as if he had seen a ghost. He screamed in a panic. "That's impossible. I ordered Lancer to destroy your heart."
"Destroying the heart will kill?"
"That's for ordinary masters and savant.
Don't forget, this guy is the 8th heroic spirit that shouldn't have appeared. His way of existence is special and unreasonable. The law that applies to ordinary people naturally doesn't apply to Dustless. Takeo Joyu coldly glanced at Kenneth, who was stunned. She did not hide her sneer. Damn it! Sensing that his life was fading away, Kenneth was like a mad dog. When he wanted to drag Takeo Joyu down with him, it was already too late. Bang bang bang. A few shots were fired consecutively. Kenneth's head was shot into blood, leaving behind a few huge holes. He and Lancer finally disappeared together forever. With Lancer's death, the curse left on Saber's arm also disappeared. We finally got rid of Lancer. It's a success. Let's go back, Takeo Joyu. Wei Gong Kisi showed a rare smile and took the initiative to greet Takeo Joyu. He wanted to give her a warm hug, but who knew that this guy only nodded coldly. Although they won this war, Wei Gong Kisi also lost the people's hearts because of it. Chapter 1693. Serves you right. Glancing at the indifferent Joyu Mamie, Dustless wasn't surprised. Wei Gong Kisi was someone who could sacrifice others for his own justice, so it was normal for him to be hated. His protagonist aura was also limited. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Ignoring Joyu Mamie and Wei Gong Kisi, Dustless turned into a flash of light and disappeared from sight. Cough cough Mamie, I have something to say. Awkwardly coughing twice, Wei Gong Kisi revealed an apologetic expression and cleared his throat. When he was about to apologize, Joyu Mamie's words made him raise his eyebrows. Maybe the so-called justice that I insisted on before was wrong. Just like what Dustless said to Alice Phil a few days ago, creating a world where there is only justice? Our dreams might be too illusory. Joyu Mamie's eyes lit up, and her light tone carried a sense of relief. People don't have to bear anything when they are alive. As long as they feel happy, it is enough. The person who can decide their own fate is often themselves. This is what Dustless said. You? Wei Gong Kisi was dumbfounded. Damn, do you need to be so deceptive? How could a heroic spirit's casual words be able to turn his best friend who had followed him for many years? This is simply too deceptive. What kind of charm does that kid have? Wei Gong Kisi's weathered face had some other emotions. Jealousy. Don't listen to Dustless's nonsense. He is just a heroic spirit. What is there to listen to the words of a dead person? Mamie, don't be deceived by him. Wei Gong Kisi nervously explained. The young woman in front of him was his spiritual food. If Joyu Mamie betrayed him, just thinking about the consequences made Wei Gong Kisi break out in cold sweat. Ever since Dustless, this jinx, appeared, his former best friend, even his servant, became unreliable. Dongmu City. Ahrensburg family's villa. What should I eat tonight? In the brightly lit luxurious villa, Dustless was rushing to the dining hall. After the big battle, his stomach was grumbling in protest. Saber. Is it just you? Where is my master, Alice Phil? After stepping into the restaurant, Dustless looked around and found that Saber was the only one who hungrily devoured the dazzling array of food. She was so fast that it was shocking. It was hard to imagine that such a petite girl would have an even more terrifying appetite than a burly man who had been starving for more than 10 days. It seems to be in another room. The people from the church have rushed over. It seems that they have a mission for Alice Field. Saber's mouth was covered in grease, and she blushed when she realized that she had lost her composure. A notice from the church? Hearing that, Dustless frowned and asked, if it's the church, they can use familiar demon to go there. Why did they come here? I can only ask Alice Phil about the specifics. I don't know what they're talking about. But before that, I want to thank you. Saber walked in front of Dustless and smiled sincerely. Then she bowed solemnly. The curse on my arm has disappeared. You killed Lancer, right? No need to thank me. It's just a small matter. We don't owe each other anything from now on. Dustless didn't mind. He had a good impression of Saber. Besides, Saber was injured because of his own carelessness. Ta-ta-ta-ta. At the same time, the sound of hurried footsteps suddenly came from the corridor. Looking up, a flawless face and straight white hair invaded his eyes first. Looking closely, it was Alice Phil. The Church of Holy Light wants us to stop the Holy Grail War immediately and kill Satyr temporarily, Alice Phil said happily. After completing the mission, we'll receive a command charm. What's going to happen can't be stopped. Dustless sighed.
Then, he asked curiously, I heard that the person who came to inform us is someone from the church.
Is it Yen Feng Qili? In the previous battle, his assassin was killed. I remember that he applied for the church's protection. It's not Yen Feng Qili, but the person who came to inform us is related to him.
Alice Phil shook her head and gave an unexpected answer.
It's his father, Yen Feng Qili. I heard from Satyr that he's the supervisor of the Holy Grail War. Saber nodded slightly and didn't suspect anything. Then, she explained, since it was sent in the name of the church, there shouldn't be any shady dealings behind this mission. I guess all the masters will participate. Even if they can't get the command charm, they don't want the enemy to get it. Supervisor? Are you talking about that old man, Yen Feng Qili? In fact, he's already in cahoots with Toshiomi Nagasaka. Dustless curled his lips and said disdainfully, that old man is in cahoots with Toshiomi Nagasaka. As for the supervisor, it's even more ridiculous. Yen Feng Qili, the son of Yen Feng Qili, is participating in this Holy Grail War. All fairness has become unfairness. Also, Dustless's face fell. He sneered in his heart. That old man has a bunch of command charms. He can give them to whoever he wants. He's a big problem. I might as well kill him. Since the word fairness had lost its meaning, then the supervisor, Yen Feng Qili, had also lost its meaning. In the dead of night, Dustless's clone secretly snuck into the church and secretly killed off Yen Feng Qili. Yen Feng Qili was present during this, but he couldn't do anything against Dustless. He could only watch helplessly. Chapter 1694.
Bang bang bang.
There were a few crisp sounds coming from Toshiomi Enosaka's house. Toshiomi Enosaka lost his usual calmness. His face was ferocious, and he even smashed some delicate porcelain in anger. Looking at the fragments all over the ground, even so, the raging flames in Toshiomi Enosaka's eyes were still burning. He still couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. Yen Fengli was dead. This sudden news hit Toshiomi Enosaka a lot. Yen Fengli was one of his important allies. With a special relationship with the church, he could also cheat. But now... In short, Toshiomi Enosaka was very angry now.
Master! An old-fashioned emotionless voice invaded his ears.
Toshiomi Enosaka immediately changed his face.
As a noble magician, it was necessary to pay attention to elegance at all times.
Kaylee?
I am deeply saddened by the death of your father.
Toshiomi Enosaka showed a painful and sad look. After all, it was his important ally. It was normal to be sad when he died. But, Toshiomi Enosaka continued, I hope you can continue to maintain the relationship between the church and the Enosaka family, so that it will be good for both of us. I will, master. Yen Fengli still nodded with no expression. In fact, he didn't have any sadness or tears for Yen Fengli's death. Not even a trace of tears. As for the reason, Yen Fengli didn't know. One day later. What? You ordered us to kill Castor. In the villa of the Ahrensburg family, Dustless stared at Kimiko Kissy and Alice Phil. His head was buzzing. He had already killed Yen Feng and Li Zhang, so this boring mission should be over. Is there anything wrong? Kimiko Kissy looked at Dustless's eyes and asked faintly. Dustless raised his eyebrows when he saw this. He thought to himself, it seems that the people of the church have sealed off the death of Yen Feng Rizheng. It should be Toshimi and Yen Feng Kaylee who did it. These two guys are really shameless. They actually want to get something for nothing. Since Yen Feng Rizheng was dead, the quest reward of killing Satyr and obtaining a command seal was obviously not going to be fulfilled. However, Toshiomi Inaka and Yen Feng Rizheng were still trying to trick everyone into fighting Satyr. What else could it be other than trying to gain something without risking anything? Not only that, the overseer of the Holy Grail War had been killed. This meant that all the illegal activities in the past had become legal. All sorts of crazy methods could be used. Anyway, this time, it's going to be a luxurious hunting feast. Dustless and Saber are responsible for dealing with Castor, and I'll secretly snipe the other masters. Wei Gong Kissy's eyes lit up.
Since the masters chose to stop the Holy Grail War and temporarily kill Castor, then this mission must gather all the masters. Wei Gong Qixi could also hide in the dark and kill them one by one. Despicable! Saber snorted with dissatisfaction. She was very unhappy with Wei Gong Qixi's behavior. Wu Mi, come with me to prepare. Wei Gong Qixi completely ignored Saber's complaint and left. Dustless, you also need to prepare a little. Even if we can't get the command seal, we can't let it fall into the hands of others. Looking at Dustless's lazy eyes, Alice Field solemnly reminded him that Castor violated the rules of the Holy Grail War and killed innocent people. This is entirely for his own selfish reasons. His master is also not a good person. Saber, who had a strong sense of justice, hated Castor deeply. She couldn't wait to get rid of him. Not only Castor, but his master is also a pervert. Not only is he not a good person, but that guy also discussed the fun of killing with Castor. Dustless rolled his eyes and said, the combination of Yu Shanglong Jijia and Castor was definitely the most perverted kind. Dustless, actually, I have a very puzzling question to ask you. Alice Field stared at Dustless suspiciously and said the doubts in her heart. Sovereign's existence needs its master to provide mana. Why don't you need me to provide mana? Dustless stared at Alice Field. He really didn't know how to answer this question. That's because my own mana is extremely large. I don't need the master to provide mana. After being silent for a long time, Dustless made up a somewhat reasonable reason. He was not a real heroic spirit, and he didn't need any mana to fight. The command seal on Alice Field's wrist was just for show. It was wishful thinking to control him. The situation is indeed like what Dustless said. Even if Msader suddenly dies, as long as the heroic spirit's own mana storage is high, it is not difficult to maintain the body. Saber stepped forward to help. She stared at Dustless in disbelief and exclaimed, you should have consumed a lot of mana in the previous battle. Yet, you can still maintain your physical form without being affected. How ridiculous is your mana storage? That's not the point. Dustless looked at Saber's admiring face and coughed twice embarrassedly. How could he maintain the body forever? It had nothing to do with the mana, because Dustless himself was not dead. Naturally, he could maintain the body indefinitely. As for the huge amount of mana that Saber said, Dustless didn't even have a trace. Chapter 1695. It was a stinky underground sewer. There was dirty black mud everywhere, the smell was disgusting, it was similar to the rotten smell of animal corpses, and the gloomy environment was like the legendary underworld. Boom boom boom. The ground trembled, and many cracks appeared on the solid floor. A huge hole appeared, and the bright sunlight shone in. Those two guys really know how to choose the place. There was a sound wave in the quiet atmosphere, followed by Saber's light voice. Compared to this, I'm more concerned about how they survived here. Dustless touched his chin and looked curious. He sniffed slightly. The rotten smell made it difficult to breathe. That makes sense. Saber nodded. Castor and his master could survive in such a harsh environment. Castor and his master were amazing. But Dustless's right eye changed, and a mysterious blue and white eye appeared. He could see through the boundless darkness, and the scene in the distance could be seen at a glance. According to Sesei's information, this seems to be the location of Castor's magic workshop. There should be a big harvest. Saber said with an expectant tone. There is a big harvest, but the result may be the opposite of what you think. Dustless looked at Saber with a deep look, then he shouted, Fire release! Great fireball technique! Boom boom boom. The huge fireball rushed out, and the originally dark and strange environment was instantly lit up, and the shocking scene was also reflected in Saber's eyes. Damn it, how can he do this kind of thing? Castor, that bastard, why didn't his master restrain that crazy guy? Saber clenched her fist and cursed, her voice was trembling. Looking around, there were countless children's corpses. You let Castor's master restrain him? Saber, with all due respect, Yu Shenglong Jijia's level of perversion is no worse than Castor's. They are very close, just like lovers. As a transmigrator, Dustless knew that both of them were perverted murderers. Ouch! A hoarse roar suddenly rang out. accompanied by a violent tremor. In that instant, the entire Dongmu city trembled slightly. Even though the fluctuations were minuscule, Dustless still managed to catch them. "Follow me, Castor is on the sea." Dustless flashed and appeared in front of Saber in the next second. Ignoring her shocked expression, he grabbed her slender waist and leaped into the air. "You!" Everything happened too quickly. By the time Saber regained her senses, she found herself in the sky with Dustless. Saber, who was being hugged by Dustless, blushed slightly. Her body temperature was rising rapidly, and her cheeks were burning hot. She clutched the corner of her shirt tightly, looking as if she wanted to say something but stopped herself. She looked extremely nervous and awkward. "This is the first time I've been carried in the air by someone. It feels pretty good." Saber lowered his head and looked at the entire Dongmu city. The boundless city was in his eyes, and the light gathered into a large area. The scenery was so beautiful that he felt a little infatuated. "By the way, which era are you from?" "Dustless. And your name is very strange. It seems that there is no hero that matches your identity. In addition, there is another important question." Saber stared at the face in front of her seriously and said, "Some of your abilities don't seem to belong to a hero." No matter what kind of heroic spirit it was, there was one thing that could be confirmed. He had once appeared in the track of history. As for Wu Chen, it was as if he had appeared out of thin air. There was no information to be found, not even the most basic clues. "Which era are you from?" "Actually, I don't know myself." Dustless gave a ridiculous answer, which made Saber roll her eyes. "I'm telling the truth." Dustless smiled bitterly. After all, he came from another dimension. Only God knew how many years ago he came from. Ow! Dustless flew farther and farther, gradually approaching the answer. Purple light surged on the surface of the sea, and the beast's roar was getting closer. In a trance, he could see an extremely exaggerated black shadow. "I never expected the two of us to be the last to arrive. Even the Hero King is so diligent." After passing through the layers of light, Dustless and Saber landed at the harbor. They looked at the super monster and frowned at the same time. "Humph, you sure know how to put on airs. The two of you are the slowest." An unruly voice sounded from the sky. Dustless and Saber looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. They did not need to look to know that the owner of the voice was the problematic child, Gilgamesh. "Lancer doesn't seem to be here." The Conqueror King, Iskandar, rode on the Divine Might Wheel. Although it was not as dazzling as Gilgamesh, it looked quite domineering on the surface. Swoosh 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 swoosh. Looking up in the sky, there was an aircraft with a golden hull inlaid with unknown emeralds flying in the sky. The person who was operating it was the arrogant Hero King, Gilgamesh. Lancer and his master were killed. "Naturally they won't come," Gilgamesh said indifferently. There was no fluctuation in his tone, as if he was talking about insects. "This upstart's temperament hasn't changed." Dustless shook his head and sighed. Everyone received the order to eliminate Castor. Whoever killed Castor first would be the winner and could get a command seal from the church. However, according to Dustless's guess, this must be a lie. Yan Fengli was already dead. Ow! The giant sea monster screamed crazily. It exposed its saw-like teeth and its countless tentacles that flapped its wings and tried to attack Gilgamesh in the sky. However, the distance was too high, and the sea monster couldn't attack Gilgamesh. "Bastard! You want to touch the glory of this king? Go to hell and repent." The void behind Gilgamesh rippled, and countless divine weapons flashed. When they were about to attack the sea monster summoned by Xter, there was a sudden change. An even more ferocious voice suddenly sounded. A monster wearing black armor and a helmet with red light flashed. He was standing on a fighter jet and had launched 2 missiles while Gilgamesh and the sea demon were fighting. Boom boom boom. The aircraft driven by Gilgamesh suffered heavy damage and splashed a huge fireball, which was particularly spectacular. "Tisk-sk, why did the Hero King do this?" Dustless shook his head when he saw it. He clearly saw that Gilgamesh fell into the black stinky sea. He was afraid that this guy's lungs were about to explode. Chapter 1696. Woo woo woo. The monster's gigantic mouth emitted a hiss as it spewed out a viscous liquid that resembled ink. The unlucky Hero King had just crawled out of the water when he was attacked by the mysterious ink. His body stank as it emanated a nauseating stench.
Oh, it's really embarrassing.
Is it appropriate for the ancient king to fall into such a miserable state? Dustless laughed. Archer, if you can't beat Caster and Berserker, you can kowtow and beg me.
Beg me.
Hearing Dustless's harsh laughter, Hero King Gilgamesh immediately glared at him and gnashed his teeth. He couldn't wait to swallow Dustless alive.
Boom.
Suddenly, the disgusting sea monster waved its tentacles and attacked Dustless and others. At the same time they could hear, Jean d'Arc, Jean d'Arc. Damn God. Needless to say, the culprit must be Caster, that perverted monster. Overconfident, and I repeat for the last time, I am not the Jean d'Arc you said. Saber snorted, holding her sword with both hands. Excalibur shot out a huge golden light, and a huge slash emerged.
Whoosh.
The incoming tentacles collapsed in an instant, destroyed by the huge light. The tentacles that were dancing wildly also stopped. At first glance, everything had returned to its original tranquility.
It doesn't seem to be anything special.
Saber was full of confidence.
Gulp.
However, the good times didn't last long. The tentacles that were cut off grew new tentacles again, and they were thicker and bigger than before.
This is...
Saber frowned slightly, and when she was about to attack with her sword, Dustless stopped her. This is the sea monster summoned by Caster's noble phantasm. The only way to break it is to use a decisive force to defeat it. Otherwise, this sea monster can regenerate infinitely.
Infinite regeneration?
Saber frowned when she heard this. Caster was unexpectedly difficult to deal with. Infinite regeneration. This was the first time she encountered such a tricky ability. Oh, Golden Glitter, as long as you use EA, you can crush this monster. That command seal is also your master. Inaka Toshimori's. Dustless said with a smile.
What's wrong with this guy's eyes?
Gilgamesh met Dustless's gaze and felt displeased in his heart. He had a feeling that all his secrets had been seen through and seen through. He was fuming with anger. How can this king's supreme artifact be used to deal with this kind of garbage?
Don't joke, I won't take back what I threw.
Hero King Gilgamesh looked arrogant, and he disdained to attack Caster.
It's just a bunch of toys.
If you throw them away, so be it.
Why do you care?
Dustless asked calmly. At the same time, a large amount of light swept out from behind him. The golden halo covered the entire sky, and thousands of divine weapons stood out.
Gulp.
The heroic spirits and the masters were all shocked, looking at the light above Dustless's head. Looking closely, there were more than thousands of noble artifacts. That damned imposter. Seeing this, Hero King Gilgamesh wanted to cry. He found that the way others looked at him had changed, as if the ability of Gate of Babylon was stolen by him from Dustless. If this guy really has the same ability as me, then he can definitely use that. Gilgamesh's old face was incomparably gloomy. His own unique move had been played by someone else so skillfully. He felt particularly uncomfortable in his heart. However, the next scene also confirmed Gilgamesh's conjecture. Buzz. Suddenly, a dazzling light swept out of the void, and a strange spiral sword slowly floated out of it. At the moment when the big sword flashed, the void was filled with an indescribable ominous feeling. Even Dustless had not made a move. The sky had already broken.
Is this your real noble artifact? Dustless.
Saber stared at the ominous blade, and she also felt an unprecedented destructive power and a huge sense of oppression. This strange sword was even more powerful than her Excalibur.
Noble artifact?
Kind of. The Star of Creation, Enumerelish, has the ability to break the world. Staring at the huge sea monster in the distance, its horrible shadow flashed and kept coming to the shore, intending to destroy the entire Dongmu city.
Caster, you and Joan of Arc will meet again in the next life.
Glancing at the sea monster, Dustless indifferently waved a huge light. Annihilate him, EA!
Boom.
The huge slash whistled out, and in an instant, the vast sea was split open, and the slash rushed straight to Satyr.
Whoosh.
The sharp slash made a horrifying sound as it tore through the air, causing people to feel dizzy. Even the ordinary people who rushed over after hearing the sound were unable to withstand the powerful pressure and had their eardrums shattered.
Damn, it's so strong. Castor, who was hiding in the huge sea monster, looked at the light of destruction, and his back was cold, and he quickly controlled countless tentacles to block it. Pucci! However, the dying struggle was useless. The tentacles were crushed by the strong hurricane and turned into a drizzle, powerlessly sprinkling on the sea. Boom! The dazzling slash finally pierced through Satyr, destroying it in one move. Its huge body instantly exploded. Chapter 1697. Boom boom boom. Castor's huge body exploded. It was spectacular. The whole sky was occupied by the fragmented body fragments. Slowly falling, it was no different from a fine drizzle. It's that simple? Sarvant, who recovered from the shock, looked at the duo of Dustless and Saber with a speechless face. Of course, the main focus of their attention was still the calm Dustless. Especially when the Hero King was Gilgamesh. When this fellow saw Dustless take out an EA that was identical to his eyeballs nearly popped out. Hey hey hey! Golden Glitter Archer over there. I have something to ask you. Conqueror King Iskandar drove the Wheel of Divine Power to land next to Hero King Gilgamesh and asked, "How did you steal that guy's ability?" "You bastard! Get away from this king!" Gilgamesh was about to explode when he heard that. Gate of Babylon was his unique ability. Now, Dustless could use it inexplicably. Not only that, but he, the real one, was also treated as a fake. In fact, it was not only Ryder who thought so. The rest of the Masters and Savant had the same idea. When Golden Glitter used Gate of Babylon for the first time, it was destroyed by Berserker, but now Dustless showed the true strength of Gate of Babylon. It was no wonder that everyone was daydreaming. Well, I will find a chance to let you witness the gap between a fake and a real one. Hero King Gilgamesh snorted angrily, and left. He was very angry with today's battle. Enosaka's mansion. Kiri, our plan needs to be modified. The 8th hero is very strong. I used to think that Gilgamesh was the strongest, but now it seems that I was wrong. Enosaka Toshimi's face was full of decadence, and his eyes were full of unwillingness. Yes. Judging from the battle just now, Gilgamesh may not be his match. Yen Feng Qi maintained his composure. But only this time, he looked at Enosaka Toshimi's eyes. There was a strange light, like a hungry beast. No one knew what he was thinking. Kiri, I have something for you. Pucci. Suddenly, Yen Feng Qi attacked. He didn't give Toshimi a chance to finish his words. He used a dagger to end Toshimi's life. There was a visible bloody hole in his heart. Pucci. As if afraid that Toshimi Nagasaka's death wasn't complete enough, Yen Fengili gave him another stab. Why? I treated you so well, and I even wanted to avenge your father. Tell me everything you want to know. Why are you so vicious? Toshiomi Inaka's lips trembled as he asked. Avenge my father? Yen Feng Qi followed and then said expressionlessly, "As expected, master, you don't understand me. My only regret is that I didn't kill my father with my own hands. Archer and I will finish the mission you didn't finish," Yen Feng Qi said coldly and turned to leave. However, he did not see that in the dark room, a pair of bright eyes were watching this scene in a daze. So that's how it is, Gilgamesh, that bastard betrayed me. Toshimi Nagasaka was unwilling to cry, but Yen Feng Qi turned a deaf ear and left with no expression. Toshimi Nagasaka didn't have much time. We seem to be late. Outside Toshimi Nagasaka's house, Dustless, Saber, and Alice Phil looked at the gloomy building. Saber and Alice Phil's delicate eyes wrinkled. They looked at each other and could see the confusion in each other's eyes. The reward for defeating Castor is to find the church. Why do you come to Toshimi Nagasaka's house now? Alice Phil was full of questions. Yen Feng Qi is dead, and his son Yen Feng Qi is colluding with Toshimi Nagasaka. What's wrong with the son's debt? Dustless asked flatly. It seems that no one is here. Alice Phil pressed the doorbell, but no one responded for a long time. I smell blood. After a long silence, Saber suddenly interrupted and said, It seems that someone is dead here. Could it be? Dustless heard the words and kicked open the door of Toshimi Nagasaka's house. According to his vague memory, He searched for the trace of Toshimi Nagasaka. Soon, the three of them passed through the tunnels and walked to an old door. Woo-woo. Just when they were about to open the door, an unexpected sobbing sound was the first to enter their ears. Let's go in. Dustless and Saber looked at each other. Saber opened the door, and Dustless blocked in front of Alice Phil to prevent any accidents. Pucci! Saber pulled out the sword of Excalibur and easily broke the door. She thought she would meet servant of Toshimi Nagasaka, but when she saw the blood-red figure, she was stunned. Sure enough, Yen Fengkiri still killed Toshimi Nagasaka and is still in cahoots with Archer. Are the two of them really that compatible? Dustless whispered to himself, and then glanced at Toshimi Nagasaka's body. No, he was still barely breathing, and his heart and another knife wound were temporarily bandaged, but he was not far from death. Akui Nagasaka and Rin Nagasaka? He glanced at the two of them in surprise. Apparently, they helped Toshimi Nagasaka temporarily treat his wound. Strange, I remember that they left Dongmu City. Dustless whispered secretly, his mouth squirmed, and when he was about to speak, Toshimi Nagasaka's old and desperate voice sounded first. Chapter 1698. I'm sorry, Miss Alice Field. It was rude of me to let you see me in such a sorry state. Toshimi Dosaka's tone was very subtle. Due to the distance, Alice Phil could not hear his words clearly. She did not understand what he meant. Master Enosaka, please speak your mind. Alice Field took a few bold steps forward, taking the initiative to approach the dying Toshiomi Enosaka. Dustless and Saber were both here, so she did not have to be afraid of Toshiomi Enosaka's schemes. I would like to entrust the mother and daughter to the care of the Einsbaron family. Toshiomi Enosaka glanced at Kue Enosaka and the teary-eyed Rin Enosaka. He lowered his head in shame, then put on an apologetic expression and blamed himself. Now that things have come to this, I won't blame anyone. I can only blame myself for being blind. It's fine if I die, but I don't want to implicate Kue and Rin. You just realized that you were blind? Wu Chen snorted when he heard that. His face was full of ridicule and disdain. This guy was too self-righteous. He thought that he controlled the master who had calculated everything. That was why he was killed by himself in the end. Watch your tone. I won't allow you to look down on my father. A girl with a ponytail and emerald eyes suddenly appeared in front of Dustless. Her angry eyes locked onto him, and she shook her fist threateningly. She looked like she would beat him up if he dared to talk nonsense again. This little girl. Seeing this, Dustless could only roll his eyes. If it was any other heroic spirit who provoked him, he could have beaten them up to vent his anger. But if it was a little girl who was not even 10 years old. Rin, shut up. He's right. I was too complacent in this Holy Grail war, so much so that I neglected the dangerous people around me. Toshiomi Enosaka waved his hand with the last of his strength, then looked at Alice Field with hopeful eyes. The Enosaka family will withdraw from this Holy Grail war. I hope that you can take care of the mother and daughter for me. This? Alice Phil hesitated for a moment when she heard this. Looking at Toshimi's pleading eyes, she couldn't help but feel pity for him. In the end, she gritted her teeth and said, "All right, I agree to your choice. If that's the case, then I can die in peace." Hearing this, Toshiomi Enosaka smiled and left the mortal world. In the end, he closed his turbid eyes in satisfaction. What a farce. However, Toshiomi Enosaka still has some conscience. At least he's better than the scum who used his wife as bait. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. He vaguely understood Toshiomi Inaka's intentions, and his impression of him changed slightly. Nothing was absolute. It was one thing if Yen Fengkiri killed Toshimi, but what if he attacked Rin and Kue Toshimi as well? It wasn't impossible. Yen Fengkiri was a temperamental person. No one knew what he would do. It was normal for Toshimi to leave his family in Alice's care. He could use this opportunity to protect Sang. Moreover, the Toshimi family had already withdrawn from this Holy Grail war. They were no longer a threat to the Ahrensburg family. We won't be able to get the command seal. Yen Fengkiri probably took it all. Let's go back. After a few hours, Dustless and the others finally left the Toshimi family. During this time, They held a funeral for Toshimi. Aliceville also took the initiative to comfort Rin and Kue Toshimi. The orphan and widow were quite pitiful. On a bustling street, the car Dustless and the others were stopped in front of a supermarket. Aliceville said that she wanted to help Rin and Kue Toshimi buy some basic necessities. Women sure have a lot of things to do. They're always like this. Sitting in the car, Dustless's casual words attracted 3 hostile gazes. He turned around and saw that it was Saber, Rin, and Kue Toshimi. Cough cough cough. That was a slip of the tongue. After Wu Chen cursed his bad luck, he immediately apologized. They were living under the same roof. He could offend a strong man, but he definitely couldn't offend a woman. You guys wait here. I'll go see why Aliceville is so slow. Seriously, it's just buying some necessities. Does she need to take so long? Dustless complained as he got out of the car. Just as he was about to close the door, an unexpected figure grabbed him. A strong man with red skin reached out and grabbed Dustless's shoulder. His rough face was filled with a bold smile. He waved the huge wine barrel in his other hand and laughed. Isn't this the 8th heroic spirit? Let's drink together tonight. I even invited that guy Gold Sparkle. A banquet between kings isn't something that can be casually attended. Do you want to come? This person was Ryder, the Conqueror King Iskandar. His master was Weber Velvet. However, Dustless only glanced at him in boredom and said dispiritedly, Sorry, I'm just a normal person. I'm not interested in the banquet of kings. Hey, don't reject me so coldly. Even if you're not interested, I remember that your ally Saber is a famous Night King. She should be interested in this kind of thing. Ryder didn't care about Dustless and looked at Saber in the car. Night King, what do you think? Don't you want to discuss the path of kings with other kings? Ryder asked expectantly as he got into the car with his rough face. Sorry, Conqueror King. My attitude towards this kind of thing is the same as Dustless. Saber also shook her head and refused to participate in the banquet of kings. Chapter 1699. Oh, this is really giving me a headache. Seeing that Dustless and Saber were not interested, Ryder could not help but sigh in disappointment. He lowered his head, looking rather disappointed and depressed. Hurry up, Ryder. Don't think that everyone is as bored as you. The thin figure behind the broad figure urged impatiently, staring at Dustless fearfully. Ryder's master, Wilbur Velvet, felt a lingering fear as he looked at those dark pupils. The 3 heroic spirits that had died so far were all killed by Dustless. Wilbur Velvet had even secretly given Dustless the nickname, Heroic Spirit Killer. Sorry for the long wait, it took a while. Aliceville rushed out of the supermarket with an apologetic smile on her face. When I saw the dazzling products, I was a little... Ryder? Are you here to declare war? Seeing Ryder and his master, Aliceville frowned in doubt. I was thinking too much, I'll take my leave. Ryder gave Aliceville and Dustless a reassuring look, then left with his master out of extreme boredom. That's strange. After returning to the car, Dustless stared at Ryder's back that had not yet disappeared, muttering suspiciously. Is there something wrong? I don't think Ryder and his master have any intention of attacking us, and Ryder doesn't look like a heroic spirit that would attack others. Saber, who was in charge of driving, replied. She had done a lot of research on Ryder's personality. That's not what I meant. Dustless shook his head, then explained softly. What I meant was, it's strange that Ryder gave up so easily. In my impression, Ryder would definitely pester us to participate in the King's Feast. But I'm curious that you rejected it. You and I are different. You were once the king of ancient Britain. Your identity is very suitable to participate. Saber's eyes flashed with a complicated sense of desolation, but she did not explain further. In the blink of an eye, it was night time. Ha ha ha! Bold laughter resounded through the sky. Looking at the rough man in front of him, Wu Chen sighed. Sure enough. He fixed his eyes and saw that this guy was Ryder. Well, I'm really sorry. Wilbur Velvet hurriedly bowed and apologized. He had tried his best to stop Ryder, but the guy was determined and insisted on drinking with Dustless and Saber. Ryder, you bastard! Saber frowned as she stared at the big guy in front of her and warned. Your actions can be seen as an invasion. We can forcibly expel you. Hee hee, since I'm here, you won't be able to chase me away, right? As the saying goes, those who have nothing to lose are not afraid of those who wear shoes.
At this moment, Ryder placed the wine barrel on the ground and said with a look of indifference, "As the Night King, you shouldn't be so petty."
Forget it, sit down. Dustless shook his head helplessly and gestured for the two to sit down. At the same time, he glanced at the dark corner on the left. Hero King, are you a street rat? Hiding at home every time. Are you afraid of dying in the light? Dustless's sudden sarcasm stunned Saber and Ryder. They looked at the east corner at the same time.
A golden light flashed and a man in golden armor appeared.
Your eloquence is stronger than your strength. The arrogant archer Hero King appeared and said proudly, "The protagonist is usually the last to appear. This is common sense. The minions that come out early are the first to die. So in this war, this king is destined to have the last laugh." Archer, Lunatic's personality hasn't changed at all. Do you still think you can get the Holy Grail? To be honest, I'm already a little desperate.
Taking a glance at Dustless, Ryder sighed and immediately poured himself a glass of wine.
At the same time, he also handed a glass of wine to Dustless and Saber.
Compared to the arrogant archer Hero King, Ryder knew his strength better.
Humph, bastard, pay attention to your words.
The Hero King archer swept an unfriendly glance at Ryder, and immediately stared at Dustless and Saber with his torch-like eyes.
He announced loudly, "It's not about obtaining the Holy Grail. The so-called Holy Grail was originally this king's. It's just returning it to its rightful owner.
Another thought is that this king wants to teach thieves like you who attempted to steal my treasures a lesson."
This guy's head must have been crushed by a door. Dustless scanned the Hero King archer with a look of pity. Immediately, he began drinking to drown his sorrows. After all, they were all kings. He did not have such a status, so it was inappropriate for him to interrupt. He just needed to stay out of it. "Archer, the next time you talk big, you'd better build an iron tongue." Saber mocked the Hero King coldly. This guy didn't even blush when he lied. It was obvious that he was an expert. Iron tongue? Hearing this, Archer frowned and pursed his lips. Then he asked in puzzlement, "This king's tongue isn't wrong. Why do I need an iron tongue?"
"You don't even know this?"
Dustless exposed him with a smile. "The next time you talk big, you won't sprain your tongue. After all, it's made of iron." With that said, everyone roared with laughter, ignoring the livid Hero King. Chapter 1700. When the Hero King heard the duo's mockery, his nose nearly went crooked from anger. As everyone knew, he had a bad temper to begin with. He never knew what it meant to endure humiliation. He had always believed that the heavens were number one and he was number two. No, he had always believed that the heavens were number two and that he was number one. Now that he was being humiliated and ridiculed in public by Dustless, he gritted his teeth in anger as his facial expression twitched. Unlucky! The Hero King cursed silently as he picked up the wine barrel and began drinking. Gulp! Gulp! Who knew that the Hero King would spit it all out after taking 2 mouthfuls? He cursed at Ryder. Preposterous. Giving the king such trashy wine to drink is blasphemy. Trashy? Blasphemy? Ryder was secretly rendered speechless as he retorted, "This is already the best wine on the market." A bastard who has never seen the world. I knew you would say that. The Hero King curled his lips in disdain and immediately threw an exquisite golden wine cup to Dustless and company. This king had once collected some of the treasures on the ground. The best things in the world are all mine. Wine is no exception. Don't you have such an ability as well? Saber leaned close to Dustless's ear and whispered into it. She said strangely, "This fellow can't be your biological brother, right? Both of you have the same ability." Huh? Dustless's drunkenness disappeared from Saber's question. He looked at Golden Twinkle, who had an explosive expression and was rendered speechless. "If he was my biological brother, I would have long been killed." According to Archer's personality, what you say makes sense. Saber, who was taken aback, nodded resolutely. Phew. That feels great. After Ryder finished drinking, he used his hazy drunkenness to say loudly, "After obtaining the Holy Grail,
My wish is to be reborn and conquer this world again. I want Iskandar's name to spread to every corner of the world. If that's the case, then the Holy Grail is destined to pass you by, Conquest King. Swirling the red liquid in the wine cup, Dustless explained, your name has already spread throughout the world. No, that's history. I want to rule the world again. Ryder shook his head like a rattledrum. By the way, Dustless, what's your wish? Saber blinked her eyes and asked with a hint of anticipation in her tone. Saber wasn't the only one who was curious. Even the Conquest King and Hero King had put down the alcohol they had brought to their mouths. Their eyes circled around Dustless. My wish, ha! Dustless thought for a moment, and to his dismay, he realized that he did not have a single decent wish at the moment. Even if he had a wish, it would be impossible for him to fulfill it with the power of the Holy Grail. I don't have any wishes. After a while, Dustless gave an answer that left everyone speechless. I don't have any wishes either. The Hero King immediately added, all the treasures in the world belong to this king. That so-called Holy Grail is no exception. Participating in this boring war is only to teach you lawbreakers, thieves who wish to steal my Holy Grail, a lesson. You and Archer seem to have the same ability. Is there such a thing as the Holy Grail? Saber asked Dustless. No. After thinking about it carefully, Dustless replied decisively. Ha ha ha. The Hero King smiled proudly and pointed to Dustless and said loudly, there is definitely no fake, so this king is the real one. In the past few days, the Hero King had been gloomy. Since Dustless used the treasure of the king to defeat Castor, all the masters and heroic spirits regarded him as a fake. No, you misunderstood me. Glancing faintly at the Hero King, Dustless suddenly said, my treasure of the king are all killing weapons. Even if I have something like the Holy Grail, I don't remember it. Who knows, I might have even thrown it away. I'm a person who doesn't like to collect worthless items that take up a lot of space. This time it was Saber and Ryder's turn to be speechless. Both of them were local tyrants. Get the Holy Grail, I will change the history of the destruction of ancient Britain. Saber's eyes shone with a cold light, and her eyes were as dazzling as diamonds. Who would have thought that as soon as these words fell, it immediately attracted the ridicule of the Hero King and Ryder. Ryder, did you hear that? This naive little girl actually did such a thing. The Hero King laughed as if he heard the funniest joke in the world. If your dream is just like this, then I will never recognize you as the king. Although Ryder was not as exaggerated as the Hero King, he also shook his head and held a negative attitude. What's wrong with saving your own country? Don't you two have any regrets about the destruction of the country you loyally protect? Saber asked angrily, feeling that her dignity was trampled on. Never regret. The Hero King and Ryder were determined, and their resolute tone didn't seem like they were lying or deliberately attacking Saber. The king acknowledges it. The king allows it. The king carries the entire world. The king is the absolute controller. A unique existence. Wanting me to die for others is simply wishful thinking. The Hero King said loudly, while the Conquest King nodded thoughtfully. It dealt a blow to Saber as she involuntarily looked at the silent Dustless with her despondent eyes. To be honest, I have never been a king, nor do I understand what the so-called king's way is. Looking into Saber's eyes, Dustless said the answer he once got. I have lived for so many years, and I have concluded my own principles. There is no right or wrong in this world. Just do as your heart wishes. Walk your own path and let others say what they want. Everything is fine as long as you have a clear conscience. Chapter 1701. Walk your own path. Let others talk about it. Upon hearing Dustless's words, the Hero King and Conquest King simultaneously figured out the meaning behind it. They nodded in unison as their eyes emitted a bright glow. Be it a king or a commoner, all they needed to do was follow their hearts. There was no right or wrong. Everything could be decided according to their will. I never expected this inferior impostor to have such a different view of things. Shaking the golden cup in his hand, the Hero King did not hesitate to pour the scarlet liquid into his mouth. That makes sense. There is no right or wrong in this world to begin with. At the end of the day, everyone just has different standpoints. Nodding his head, the Conquest King also accepted Dustless's explanation. Immediately, he sighed and said, "The onlooker sees things clearly."
Perhaps it's precisely because you aren't a king that you can see things more clearly and feel more at ease.
What a great wise man. Dustless did not reply when he heard that.
He stood up and stretched his back.
After loosening his muscles, he said, "I can't be considered wise. At the end of the day, it's just that I've lived a little longer than all of you.
I'm a little tired. I'll head back to wash up and sleep. Goodbye."
Just as his voice faded, Dustless did not give them a chance to react. His body gradually lost its texture as it transformed into streams of light that filled the sky like countless fireflies. In an instant, he vanished from the trio's eyes.
What an unfathomable fellow. The Hero King and Conquest King were dumbfounded. After carefully sensing the situation, they shook their heads.
Despite not having any magic power and having a combat strength close to 5, he was surprisingly powerful. He had beaten all the heroic spirits to a pulp. Currently, all the heroic spirits that had been killed were all Dustless's doing. "Thank you, Dustless." Saber's eyes were filled with gratitude as she swept a glance in the direction where Dustless had disappeared. She had been dealt quite a blow by the Hero King and Conquest King, who echoed each other, to the point of hesitation. If not for Dustless lending a helping hand at the critical moment, Saber would have found the confidence to stand on her feet despite it being an insignificant sentence.
"Ah! A bunch of kids who haven't grown up yet.
How dare you talk about the ridiculous way of the king in front of me?
Should I say that you guys are naive or ignorant?"
In the brightly lit corridor, even in the dead of night, it was still shining brightly. The corridor was filled with straight murals, giving it an indescribable elegance. In any case, a rich family like Einsbellen didn't lack money. Using a popular saying, "I'm a fool with a lot of money." Creak! Just as Dustless pushed open the door of his room and was about to turn on the lights to take a shower, he strangely found that all the chandeliers in the room were on. Not only that, when he walked into the bedroom, he saw 2 figures on his bedding. "This is..." Dustless was immediately dumbfounded. The 2 uninvited guests in the room were not the most bizarre thing. The most bizarre thing was that these 2 figures were not wearing any clothes. Their exquisite and flawless skin was completely exposed to Dustless's sight. "Get lost, pervert!" The atmosphere was tense for a few seconds before a few pillows were thrown at him. Upon closer inspection, the 2 figures were actually Rin en Osaka and Kue en Osaka.
"Wait."
With a flick of his finger, Ryatsu shredded all the pillows. After taking a closer look at the furnishings in the room, Dustless confirmed that he didn't walk into the wrong room. He shouted angrily, "This is my room without a doubt.
The 2 of you are sleeping in my room without a doubt.
There's no doubt that the 2 of you are the intruders.
How did I become the pervert? Don't you get it? This castle doesn't have any extra rooms for us to use, so your room is being used. A mere Einherjar should feel honored."
Rin en Osaka and her mother hid under the bedding with red faces.
"Ha!" Dustless was speechless as he looked at the arrogant Rin Tosaka. This bullshit explanation was too far-fetched. The Ahrensburg family was a nouveau riche. The castle was as big as a few football fields. How could there not be a few rooms for people to sleep in?
I'm really sorry, Mr. Einherjar.
It was Miss Alice Phil who arranged for Rin and me to stay here. If you are dissatisfied, Rin and I can leave,"
the gentle and virtuous Kue en Osaka explained.
"Huh. That's not necessary. You can sleep here for now. I'll go ask Master if there are any other bedrooms. Good night."
Dustless turned around and closed the door. Then he walked towards Alice Phil's room. Unexpectedly, as soon as he opened the door, he saw her arguing with Wei Gong Kisi. Their faces were red, and it was obvious that they were both angry.
"How strange. The 2 of them can argue?"
Dustless had a strange expression. In his impression, this couple had always been the type that stuck together like honey. It was unprecedented for them to argue.
"I have something to do, so I'll leave first. Take care."
Seeing Dustless appear, Wei Gong Kisi left with a gloomy expression. "Alice Phil, you too." Dustless stopped himself. After all, this was a matter between the couple. As an outsider, he had no right to interrupt.
"Do you want to ask about Kue and Rin?"
"I'm sorry, Dustless, but this is something I allowed." Alice Phil explained with a bleak expression. Her bright eyes clearly understood Dustless' intentions. Is that so?
Dustless nodded slightly.
He couldn't help but ask, then where's my new room?
No, there's no new room. I deliberately let you two sleep together.
Alice Phil shook her head. Then, she revealed a meaningful smile. Her face was very pale, and her smile looked more like a forced smile. I know why you want to ask, but this matter is very special.
I can only wrong you for now.
Special. Dustless smiled bitterly.
Even if it was special, he couldn't betray his teammate.
Even if he had a reason, he couldn't.
Chapter 1702.
As she looked at the aggrieved Dustless, the resentment on Alice Field's face was completely wiped away, and a wisp of a heartfelt smile flashed on her jade-like face. What's so funny? Dustless rolled his eyes and asked. He felt that this girl was gloating. Sigh. Alice Phil frowned and sighed. Her delicate face gradually lost its luster. She said sadly, Kisi wanted to kill the mother and daughter. I couldn't bear it. So we inevitably quarreled. Kill the two of them? Are you referring to Tsukasa and Osaka and Rin and Osaka?
Kisi seems to be a righteous partner.
Is there no reason?
He doesn't look like someone who would kill the innocent. Are you mistaken? Dustless frowned.
Although he was ruthless, as long as those people didn't resist and restrain themselves, he could let them go. Of course there is a reason. Although what Kisi said is reasonable, I have already promised Toshimi and Osaka. If I hurt the two of them again, I can't accept it. Alice Phil.
You didn't do anything wrong.
Dustless smiled and encouraged her loudly. You did the right thing. Remember, you are human with flesh and blood.
You are not a puppet created according to Kisi's plan.
There is no need to follow his will. So you agree with my way of doing things? Alice Phil retracted her sadness and revealed a cheerful smile.
Of course I agree.
Dustless smiled and reached out his hand. He added in his heart, as long as Kisi likes it, no matter if it is right or wrong, I will stand on his opposite side. Alice Phil organized her thoughts and explained, Miss Wumi, I just received news that Yatong Yeyen from the Yatong family is also participating in this Holy Grail War. And the reason is related to Tsukasa and Osaka and Rin and Osaka. The reason why Kisi asked me to kill the two of them secretly was to prevent Yatong Yeyen from finding out that Tsukasa and Osaka and Rin are living in our house.
Otherwise, Yatong Yeyen's berserker will very likely attack us. The enemy will also have an opportunity to take advantage of. Until now, Kisi is still afraid of Yen Fengqi.
Is that the only reason?
Wei Gongqi's words make sense.
Dustless nodded in agreement. This reason was barely acceptable. If Jantong Yeyen really knew that Kuei and Ling were here, he would definitely lead the Berserker army to attack the Einsbaron family. But, changing the topic, Dustless glanced at Alice and Phil suspiciously. Then they can also live with Saber. There's no need for me to live with them. Alice, Phil, I also think that the mother and daughter can sleep with me.
Don't you trust my ability?
At the same time, Saber grumbled. For some reason, when she heard that Dustless was going to sleep with Ling and Kuei, she felt a little jealous. After all, they were allies in the trenches. It did not feel good to have them taken away from her just like that. Have the Hero King and the Conqueror King left. Noticing Saber's appearance, Dustless instinctively looked out of the window. The place where they were drinking was empty. The Hero King and the Conqueror King seemed to have left. This banquet could be considered the best banquet. If they were to meet again, they would fight to the death. That's a good idea, but it's impossible. Alice Phil's face was filled with worry. She decisively rejected the idea. That's impossible. You're Qisi's master. What if he uses a command spell on you? Although the probability of Wei Gongqi using a command spell on such a trivial matter was close to zero, nothing was absolute. It was better to be safe than sorry. Moreover, Wei Gongqi was a person who was difficult to grasp. Moreover, in this Holy Grail War, all of Wei Gongqi's command spells remained intact because of Dustless. Until now, he had not used a command spell on Saber. Even if he were to use a command spell on Saber, it would not be a big deal. After all, the Holy Grail War was about to end.
So, I'll be the scapegoat this time? Dustless glanced at Alice Phil in annoyance. He said in a troubled and depressed tone, "Doesn't that mean that it's useless for me to change rooms? Kuei and Ling will still be with me." "That's what I mean." Alice Phil nodded slightly. She looked at Dustless strangely and said, "You're just a heroic spirit. Why do you have to care so much?" Hey. You're talking as if heroic spirits have no human rights." Dustless made a scary expression. Unexpectedly, Alice Phil did not care. Instead, she made a face at him. She was not afraid of Dustless's threat at all. "I'm destined to be the scapegoat this time." Wu Chen looked up to the sky and heaved a long sigh. It was a sad thing to have such a troublemaking master. "Scapegoat? It's not as serious as you said. At most, I'll let you be a temporary bodyguard." As if she thought of something, Alice Phil's eyes rolled. She looked like a sly fox. "Even though Kuei Dosaka and Toshimi Dosaka have been married for many years and even had 2 children, we were bathing together just now. I know her figure." Cough, cough, cough. Noticing that Alice Phil was getting further and further away from the topic, Wu Chen couldn't help but cough twice to interrupt Alice Phil's speech. He opened his mouth and deliberately changed the topic to Saber. "As you can see, the task of protecting Alice Phil will be handed over to you, Saber. Leave it to me. Also, don't do anything out of line. Otherwise, my sacred sword will go berserk." Saber instantly took out the Excalibur. It invisibly emitted an extraordinary aura. It was full of warnings and threats. "This guy is deliberately making things difficult for me." Dustless glared at Alice Phil bitterly. He nodded at Saber and left. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.